Chapter 115. However, this was not the end. After attracting the second one, naturally there would be a third, fourth, and fifth one. Various demonic beasts gathered from all directions. It was as though they had their eyes on the fat piece of meat that was the shadow. Wave after wave of attacks began. Some attacked the shadow, while others began to kill each other. Zhu Yao suddenly had the illusion of demonic beasts attacking a city. She had never seen a single one of these demonic beasts before. She was certain that no one in the entire cultivation world had ever seen such demonic beasts before, and she was basically unable to differentiate the ranks of these demonic beasts. Clearly, they did not have the slightest bit of pressure, yet they were terrifyingly strong. If any one of them were to land in the cultivation world, it would definitely be an existence that could instantly kill everything. Even someone as strong as the shadow clearly could not defeat a group of demonic beasts like this. Even dodging became strenuous, and his figure was already becoming fainter from being bitten. However, the number of demonic beasts in the surroundings was increasing. In the beginning, Zhu Yao tried her best to hide and find a place to slip away. However, no matter how she retreated, she was unable to escape from the battlefield. When she finally walked far enough, she bumped into a demonic beast that had just been lured over. That beast was as sturdy as a small mountain, and its entire body was covered in rocks, making it look like a stone beast. A pair of flashing red eyes was staring straight at her. Zhu Yao suddenly had a bad premonition. If even that shadow could not defeat these demonic beasts, then she was definitely trash. Mistress, hurry, release your aura. Sesame turned to remind her. Oh right, she was a dragon. Demonic beasts had an instinctive fear towards her. Zhu Yao did not hesitate. Enduring the immense pain in her chest, she released her dragon's aura with all her might, and expanded it to the limit. In an instant, it was as though the entire place had been muted. All the sounds stopped. Even the demonic beasts that were fighting intensely with the shadow had strangely stopped as well. Zhu Yao simply felt a chill down her spine, as though she had heard the sound of winning a prize. This reaction wasn't right. Roar, an earth-shattering roar resounded. The demonic beasts that were still ganging up on the shadow earlier suddenly changed their target and attacked her. The hell, what happened to the promised bloodline suppression? Zhu Yao leaped onto Sesame's back and shouted out. Run! What happened to the most basic trust between humans and beasts? Release your dragon's aura. Sesame's wings flapped, and like an arrow, it flew with all its might. Only an afterimage was left in the surroundings. The demonic beasts reacted as well, and various roars sounded. Tossing aside the shadow which they were still fighting with earlier, they began to chase after Zhu Yao. The black shadow took advantage of this opportunity, and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Mistress, what should we do? Sesame was about to cry. What kind of beasts were those at the back? I've been a beast my whole life, but I've never seen anything like that. And it had such insane strength. Continue flying, use all of your spiritual energy. Zhu Yao replied. Placing Yu Ying, who was in her embrace, by her side, she then began to regulate her breathing. The black shadow's attack was too sudden, and she was caught off guard. Her had was her, and was her. Her and of many maras, her, and spiritual. Several maras of her meridians, she, her. However, it was to no avail. Instead, his injuries became more and more severe. The blood at the corner of his mouth seemed to be flowing endlessly. Mistress, they're about to catch up. The demonic beasts behind were evidently of a higher rank than her, and it was only a matter of time before they caught up. Hold on a little longer. Since things had progressed to this point, she could only give it her all. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth and retracted her aura. Using all of her energy, she wrapped the spiritual energy in her body. She tried to form a formation. As expected, this was a little useful. In just a few moments, a red formation was formed beneath her. Her dantian shattered. Adding that she had lost control of her spiritual energy, Zhu Yao's entire body was in so much pain that she was about to spasm. She could feel the meridians in her body being sliced apart by the rampaging spiritual energy. Yet, she could not stop. The moment she stopped, it meant that she would lose all signs of life. and they would be swallowed alive by the group of demonic beasts behind. It felt like an instant, yet it felt like a century had passed. Finally, the formation was completed. A flying bone beast had already caught up to them, and with its mouth wide open, it pounced towards them. Zhu Yao sliced open her index finger, gathered her spiritual energy, and wrote a rune on the formation. She then pressed on the rune with a single hand. Void activate. In an instant, a black hole that looked like the starry sky appeared in the middle of the formation, instantly sucking the 2 humans and 1 beast inside, and they disappeared from the sky. That bone beast simply pounced on empty air. It furiously flapped its wings, and let out a hee-hee-hee roar. What Zhu Yao formed was a void teleportation formation. Using the teleportation formation as a support, she then sliced open the void. It could instantly teleport them to a distance of 500 kilometers, and it was a single teleportation. The moment the teleportation was completed, it would close. However, this teleportation formation had a certain amount of backlash. If it was in the past, she would not mind such a tiny bit of backlash. However, she was already injured in the first place, and she still forcefully activated the formation. The backlash was instantly magnified by countless of times. She felt as though her internal organs were being sliced by blades, and her blood was like an open tap. She puked out a few mouthfuls. Even her divine sense was beginning to feel a piercing pain. Yuing crawled to her side and anxiously tugged on her sleeves. Mistress. Sesame returned to his human form as well, and crouched down to support her. Zhu Yao took a few deep breaths before she regained her senses. She reached out her hand to stroke Yu Ying's head and gave him a comforting gaze. Where are we right now? Sesame looked around. I can no longer sense the demonic beast horde from earlier. Most likely, we have already been transported to a very far place. Sesame, those demonic beasts, do you recognize them? Sesame shook his head. Sesame has never seen such demonic beasts, and I have never heard anyone mention them either. Just what kind of place is this? She wanted to know just what kind of place this was as well. Why did they end up here after that golden light? Oh right, earlier, she seemed to have seen that the light was emitted from that black scroll. Zhu Yao subconsciously reached into her bosom, only to realize that the scroll had long disappeared without a trace. Could it be? We have most likely entered the world within that scroll. Chen Ning had mentioned before that this was an ancient scroll, and the demonic beasts that had long gone extinct were all drawn on it. In the beginning, she had even thought that this scroll was just a normal encyclopedia of animals, though it was an ancient version. However, evidently, that scroll had only suddenly glowed after coming into contact with her blood. It teleported them here. In that case, it was basically not a scientific encyclopedia. It was very likely that it was a sealed scroll, and those demonic beasts were precisely sealed in this world. Zhu Yao roughly explained the matter regarding the scroll to Sesame. It seems like the seal on this scroll is extremely strong. Earlier, that formation of hers was able to slice through space. However, they were still in this world. It seemed like the method of shattering space was unable to return to the original world as well. Sesame frowned as well. Then how do we leave this place? Zhu Yao lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, she recalled the pitch-black ink stain at the end of the scroll. Let's look at the deepest part of this world. There might still be a chance of survival. I will depart right now. This place was simply too dangerous. Any random demonic beast would be enough to make them suffer. Sesame nodded, and then returned to his original form, concealing his own presence. He signaled for Zhu Yao and Yuing to climb up. Just as it was about to take off, suddenly, a sharp roar that could make one's scalp go numb resounded. The hell, it's here again. Chasing behind them was a gigantic bird that was enveloped in black flames. Sesame's original form was already considered huge. However, that bird's size was more than 10 times that of Sesame. With a single glance, it was about to cover half of the sky. Furthermore, that bird's roar was especially unique. Every single roar felt as though 10,000 sharp blades were slashing towards them. Zhu Yao herself was nearly unable to hold on, and had no choice but to seal Yu Ying's 5 senses, preventing him from being injured by the roar. Although that bird's flying speed was not fast, due to its huge size, a single flap of its wings would cause a powerful air current. Although they were running at the front, they would still be affected by the air current. This caused their speed to slow down. Sesame, use spiritual energy to envelop your entire body. You won't be affected by the air current. When Sesame heard this, he immediately did as he was told. As expected, after he blocked off the surrounding air current, he was no longer affected by that gigantic bird. His speed had increased by a lot, and he was getting further and further away from that gigantic bird. That demonic beast seemed to have sensed this, as its roar became even more urgent. Suddenly, it opened its long mouth, and lightning sparks could be seen flashing within. A ball of white lightning sparks grew larger and larger. It's lightning. Sesame was anxious as well. No one had expected that the bird would actually be of the lightning attribute. Other than lightning beasts, there were actually lightning attribute demonic beasts in this world. This was illogical. Lightning innately countered demonic beasts. No matter how strong Sesame's body was, it would not be able to withstand a lightning strike from a demonic beast that was of a higher rank than it. He could not help but even his voice began to tremble. That bird had already spat out that ball of lightning, and it was flying straight towards them. Mistress! In a moment of desperation, Zhu Yao had no choice but to instantly transform into her dragon form, and hook onto Sesame with her tail. Using her fastest speed, she madly flew upwards. This was definitely a subconscious action of Zhu Yao's, however. She never expected that her dragon form's flying speed would actually be this fast. In just a blink of an eye, she had already shaken off that gigantic bird. There are gains and there are losses. After returning to her dragon form, she could no longer hide her dragon might and arrogantly announced her existence. Hence, all the demonic beasts sensed it. Hence, there were even more demonic beasts chasing after them. Mama's egg. Sesame, protect Yuing. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Right now, she could only desperately flee. She hoped that if they caught up to her, she would be able to fly out in time. This was the first time Zhu Yao was using her dragon form to fly, and her entire body was filled with an indescribable sense of carefreeness. That was a connection that originated from her bloodline, and even her injuries seemed to have eased a little. Her speed grew even faster, and the surrounding scenery was only left with streaks of afterimages. It was as though she was born to fly amongst the clouds. After flying for an unknown period of time, the rising and falling roars behind her seemed to have begun to slowly weaken. Zhu Yao felt a surge of excitement in the depths of her heart. This was effective. It seemed like she would be able to shake off that group of demonic beasts in no time. As expected, the heavens would never bar one's way. The heavens would never bar one's way, my ass. Zhu Yao stopped at the side of the pitch-black sky, and in an instant, she had the urge to ruthlessly smash the heavens onto the ground. Chapter 116. Mama's egg. She finally knew why those demonic beasts did not chase after them. This was basically not the exit. This was not the first time she saw this pitch-black scene from top to bottom. This was clearly the severed grounds, the place where she was forcefully resurrected back when she was in Tasioluk. In other words, this was the end of this world. Her heart squeezed. Mistress. Sesame was dumbfounded as well. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Let's head back first." They had no choice but to find another way out. Zhu Yao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She turned around and flew towards the direction they came from. However, she suddenly felt an immense pressure assaulting them, instantly pressing the three of them down from the sky. The hell? Zhu Yao only had the time to curse out, before she was instantly pressed onto the ground. The darkness, which was still quiet earlier, as though it had suddenly opened its mouth, crazily moving towards them. Everything it passed by was devoured by the darkness, and then disappeared into the darkness. The trees, the ground, and even the air were disappearing bit by bit. The three of them were basically unable to dodge in time. They were too close, and the pressure here was too great. They were basically unable to resist at all. This was not something that could be described by mere pressure. The severed grounds was the end of the world, and within it were the laws of the heavenly Tao. As long as one was in this world, they would definitely be suppressed. Just as the darkness was about to extend to the tip of her tail, and Sesame was puking out blood from the suppression, Ying had long fainted. This couldn't go on. She could keep Sesame in her divine sense, but Ying was a human, and a 5-year-old child at that. It was because of her that he came here. If he was devoured, he would definitely die. He had just arrived in this world, and he did not know anything. She had not even taught him how to speak, and he was as blank as a piece of paper. How could he die here? Zhu Yao clenched her claws. She once again returned to her human form. She did not know if it was because her size had shrunk, but the pressure instantly lessened by a lot. However, she was still unable to stand up. She could only crawl over bit by bit, and carry Ying, who was on the ground. Sesame, return to your human form. Sesame was startled for a moment, before returning to that baby-faced youth as well, and sat next to her. The darkness had already begun to crawl onto her body. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Right now, she had no other choice but to risk it. She instantly released all of her divine sense, forming a translucent barrier of light that enveloped the three of them. It was protected inside. The black curtain had already swallowed them whole. She could feel the pain of her divine sense being torn apart. It was as if the pain had penetrated into her soul, and could make her collapse at any moment. However, she did not dare to remove the light curtain, no matter how unbearable the pain was. She could only silently tell herself in her heart that she could not retreat. He could not retreat. The pain continued to deepen, and slowly, he began to become numb. Even his consciousness began to blur. After an unknown amount of time, she fell into a state of chaos. Zhu Yao smelled a floral fragrance. It was clear and light, and it smelled especially nice. She instantly opened her eyes and found herself lying on a simple wooden bed. This should be a small house. It was so simple that it only had one piece of wood. Her body was covered with a piece of silvery veil. She felt it with her hand. It was as smooth as water. Zhu Yao was stunned for 2 seconds. He looked down at his brand new clothes, which were actually a tender pink. It was somewhat familiar. She hadn't worn this color in years. He took a deep breath, but he didn't feel any discomfort. Even his dantian was faintly filled with spiritual qi. Zhu Yao got off the bed and walked out of the house. She realized that in front of her was a boundless peach garden. The fragrance she smelled earlier was from peach blossoms. It was currently the season of blooming, and the entire place was filled with peach blossoms. As the wind blew, the entire sky was filled with peach blossoms. Zhu Yao could not help but walk into the peach forest. Just as she took a few steps, a figure appeared in front of her. He stood with his back facing her. His clothes were as white as snow, without a single speck of dust. One of his hands was placed behind his back, and his fingertips were long and slender, as though they were made of fine jade. One could not help but want to play with them in their hands. Sensing the commotion behind him, he slowly turned around. That face that entered her eyes seemed to be the most perfect masterpiece of the heavens. Every single stroke was meticulously drawn, and if there was more, it would be full, and if there was less, it would be incomplete. His expression was calm, and his thin lips were lightly pursed. Even if he did not say anything, he was still so beautiful that it made people want to contribute everything to him. This was the first time Zhu Yao knew that a person could be this beautiful. Her heart was in turmoil, and she could not help but gently raise the corner of her lips. She definitely had to strike up a conversation with such a peerlessly beautiful man. Great hero, do you lack a leg accessory? The man's brows slightly furrowed, and his expression turned a little colder. He seriously said, "Speak human language. I want to hug your thigh." He was startled for a moment, as though he was hesitating for a moment, and then slowly, he stretched out a leg. Hug. Zhu Yao. That all right, this kind of one-of-a-kind adorable stupidity. He was definitely her master. That's right. Master. Only then did Yu Yan's expression soften a little, and he lightly responded, "Amen." Glancing at the distance of about 5 steps between them, as though he was certain that she would not continue walking over, he walked over himself. A light breeze blew, and the fluttering peach blossoms fell one after another. Looking at the person walking over amidst the rain of flowers, he was so beautiful that it was suffocating, as though he was a deity that had descended into the mortal realm. All right, he was indeed a deity that had descended into the mortal realm. When Zhu Yao regained her senses, she had already been pulled into Yu Yan's embrace. She once again smelled that familiar fragrance that carried a hint of coolness. Only now did she finally believe everything. Reaching out her hands, she hugged him back. I see you again? Amen. Yu Yan's response was simple. He pulled her a little closer, and only after he had completely encircled his disciple into his embrace did the emptiness in the depths of his heart finally fill up completely. The two of them did not speak, and simply hugged each other quietly, until Zhu Yao's hands were sore. Amen. Although it was indeed very romantic to have a date in a peach blossom forest, it couldn't possibly last for several hours. Yet the moment she moved, her master was like a mother hen protecting her chick, as he pressed her back into his embrace. Master. Amen. It's already been 8 hours. Amen. If you continue hugging me, my hands are going to break. Yu Yan lowered his head and gave her a nonsense look. You have the cultivation of a demigod. Even a demigod's hands would be sore. All right then. Zhu Yao sighed. Although I have time other than hugging, can you do something else? Yu Yan was startled. As though he had thought of something, a hint of redness flashed past his face. His ears began to redden at a strange speed, and his eyes shone a little. Then he slowly lowered his head. Oh. Zhu Yao felt a wave of excitement. The 10,000-year-old block of wood was finally enlightened. As expected, Yu Yan once again, with lightning speed, aimed at her lips and forcefully kissed her. After the kiss, he pursed his lips as though he was reminiscing. And then Zhu Yao's teeth fell. Flips table. Who in the world would use spiritual energy to kiss? This old lady wants to break up with you. The moment she woke up, Zhu Yao really thought that she was version 5.0. According to her usual behavior after her reincarnation, her cultivation level had most probably increased by another level, and after the demigod stage, naturally she would ascend. Adding that she woke up in a peach blossom garden. It really matched the setting of a divine realm. Unfortunately, a certain master had mercilessly struck her confidence. This time, I'm in the lower realm. What? Master, you don't have to console me. In any case, I'm already used to dying, I can endure it. Recalling the repercussions of her reincarnation, Zhu Yao circulated her spiritual energy. She realized that although it wasn't very abundant, at the very least, there was still spiritual energy. She didn't die. Then what about Sesame and Yu Ying? Yu Yan frowned, as though he was dissatisfied with how anxious she was about outsiders. He glanced at the other straw cottage nearby. Zhu Yao sent her divine sense over, and as expected, she realized Sesame and Yu Ying were currently lying on the wooden bed in the house, as though they had fallen into a deep sleep. She instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Master, how did you find me? Yu Yan took out a black ancient scroll and lightly explained. You have my divine sense imprint on you. After I descended to the lower realm, I realized you were sealed in this item, so I casually pulled you out. The seal on the scroll was very strong, and he had spent quite a bit of effort before he managed to pull her out. However, he never expected that he would be able to see her dying look. Initially, he had thought that with her demigod cultivation level, no one in the lower realm could harm her, so he ascended with a peace of mind. However, this stupid disciple of his, if he did not keep a close eye on her, she would always court death. He felt that he had to keep a closer eye on her. This time, I'm here to bring you to the higher realm. Yu Yan voiced out his plans. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. But I'm only an early-stage demigod. Ascending now? Was that even logical? You're still aware that you're only a demigod? Yu Yan slightly narrowed his eyes and revealed a disdainful expression. Initially, I had thought that with your aptitude, it would at most take 2,000 years for you to ascend from a demigod. But now more than 1,000 years have passed, yet, you're still stuck at the early-stage demigod level. He had been on tenterhooks in the sky, bitterly waiting for such a long time, afraid that this stupid disciple of his would do something stupid again. As a last resort, he descended to the lower realm, only to realize that she basically did not have the intention to ascend. Wait a minute. The old sack. 1,000 years? How is that possible? She did not learn mathematics wrongly, right? Clearly, only 20 years had passed since her master ascended. At most 30 years. Then just where did she calculate the time of 1,000 years? 1,376 years. 5 months and 3 days. He had already kindly removed the odd number. Zhu Yao was a little confused for a moment. Logically speaking, even if she was heavily injured, she shouldn't need that much time to recover. Unless, Zhu Yao lowered her head to look at the scroll in Yu Yan's hands. Unless the flow of time in the scroll was different from the flow of time in the outside world. Chapter 117. Yu Yan glanced at the scroll in his hand, and only after a while did he reply. The seal on this scroll is from a very long time ago. I can only roughly tell that it's an incantation used to seal demonic beings. It's similar to a mustard seed space, but it also contains a hint of the law of reincarnation. Yu Yan paused for a moment. As though he had thought of something, he turned to look at his disciple. Zhu Yao instantly felt as though a bunch of grass-mud horses were whizzing through her mind. That's right. I stayed in there for a day, but 1,000 years have passed since I came out. That scroll actually contained a difference of more than 1,000 years. Zhu Yao told Zhu Yao everything that happened inside. Yu Yan's brows furrowed, and his expression became much sterner as well. In that case, this scroll must have originated from the hands of the primordial god race. What's sealed inside is most likely a desolate mystic beast, and it's rumored that it possesses the strength to rival the god race. It was no wonder that when she released her dragon aura, the demonic beasts inside attacked her without any regard for their lives. It turned out that there was an old grudge between them. Then what about this one? This scroll was so dangerous. As long as one appeared, Godzilla would destroy New York in a matter of minutes. There's no need to worry about that. Yu Yan said. This scroll contains a self-destruction incantation in the first place. Adding on the passing of time, the demonic beasts inside will no longer exist. The reason why the flow of time inside was different from the outside world was to reduce the vigilance of the demonic beasts. They probably don't even know that they're trapped in the scroll. So that was the function of the moving severed land. The wisdom of the ancients was really broad and profound. Zhu Yao suddenly recalled that shadow. According to Sesame's guesses, that person should have come from the higher realm. Master had just come down from above, so he should be even clearer about it. After Yu Yan finished listening, his expression instantly sank, and after a long while he slowly said, "The shadow you speak of is actually a shadow. I don't think it's from the upper realm." No. What exactly is that? With such terrifying power, she really could not think of anyone else other than the upper realm. Yao. Yu Yan suddenly let out a long sigh, and stroked her head. There are some things you don't have to get too involved in. There will be a great calamity in this realm, and the reason I came down this time is to bring you up. Calamity? What calamity? Yu Yan turned silent. Those matters involved too many people, and he was powerless as well. He only had one disciple in his life, so he couldn't just sit back and watch. Therefore, he risked damaging his cultivation to forcefully descend to the lower realm to bring her back safely. Listen to me and follow me. However, the more Zhu Yao listened, the more flustered she felt in the depths of her heart. It was definitely not simple. It was more likely to be related to a bug. What's going on? Do we have to go to the upper realm to avoid it? Yu Yan remained silent, and simply looked straight at her. You can't tell me? Zhu Yao clenched her fists. I'm not going up. Yu Yan's expression sank. Nonsense. I don't want to be a deserter. She already knew about the bug. If there was really a catastrophe, then let it come. She had been in this world for so many years, although she still had lingering thoughts about the previous world. However, the ties here were growing deeper and deeper. Sesame Little Radish, ZMO, Zidan Feng-yi Ancient Hill Sect, and the Azure Flight Sect which she had personally established. In fact, she had long regarded these people as her own family, but now she knew that there was danger. Yet, she just walked away. Was she still human? Zhu Yao smiled. I won't die anyway, so you don't have to worry about me. Even if she died, she could still look forward to her next rebirth. But what about the others? Even if she really could not stop the bug, she had to at least warn those people, right? Yu Yao, do you know that the path of cultivation has always been like this? Yu Yin sighed. The great Tao is heartless. The path of cultivation has always been something that goes against the heavens. I understand your nature, but you can't save everyone. This world has always been one where the strong prey on the weak, and the strong are respected. No matter what happens to the others, it's their fate as well. There will come a day when your kindness will harm yourself. Because of a moment of pity, hadn't she paid a heavy price? Take Xiao Yi for example. Clearly, she could have gotten rid of him at the very beginning. Yet, because of a moment of kindness, she let him go several times. In the end, she brought about such an ending. Although she had forgotten about it now, there will come a day when she will remember it. That day, she cried so bitterly, and regretted so thoroughly. He simply could not bear to see her walk down this old path. Master, you people always say that the great Tao is heartless, and the heavenly Tao is impermanent. But who has truly seen the so-called heavenly Tao? She understood all of these principles. Ever since she entered this world, the phrase she heard the most was the strong are respected. Has anyone really asked the heavens, and received a definite answer? In this world, the weak are prey to the strong. If you don't want to be killed, then you have to strike first. Just who was the one who told everyone this concept? The so-called heavens? Zhu Yao lightly laughed. No. The heavens have never told the people of the world to be heartless, to be powerful, and to be cruel. However, everyone seems to have gotten used to it. If you aren't strong, you will be beaten. Killing being killed. These things happen every day. As long as you're strong, as long as you're capable, it's fine. As long as you're strong enough, killing a weakling doesn't seem to be a big deal. Hence everyone hates each other, competes with each other, kills for treasures, and plunder resources. Is this really the right way? In order to become strong, you can do anything, and you can even obliterate your humanity. Take Xiao Yi for example. Clearly, he had peak-level aptitude, and heaven-defying luck. Even if he were to cultivate in peace, he could completely rely on his own abilities to prove the great Tao, and ascend into a deity. However, he just couldn't be satisfied. When he had something good, he wanted even better. Hence, after obtaining the metal spirit, he still wanted the water spirit and the wood spirit. And he made a move on her without even asking about the situation. And he did not remember the favors she had given him. No, the word favors had long disappeared from the bottom of his heart. The only thing left was the obsession of becoming stronger. I don't understand. Could it be that in order to cultivate the great Tao, we have to continue fighting like this? With such a method of cultivation, what will be left in the end? Is the great Tao that is attained through various kinds of suspicions, schemes, and slaughters really something that belongs to the heavenly Tao? Yu Yin turned silent. He had never thought about these questions before. Ever since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, the concept of the weak being prey to the strong had already been deeply imprinted in the bottom of his heart. His aptitude was excellent, and although he had experienced a few setbacks, he had never felt that there were any problems. Because this was how the world was in the first place, and he had never doubted this world either. However, he had a disciple now. Everyone says that immortal cultivation, attaining the Tao and becoming an immortal is the dream of everyone. Shouldn't the word deity be the most beautiful dream in every practitioner's heart? It should be the most perfect and soft part of human nature. However, in the current cultivation world, I can't see the slightest bit of beauty. Everyone says that the path of cultivation is a path of blood. But who would have thought that the path of deity that is walked out of this path of blood would be perfect? What is deity? And what is the Tao? The weak are prey to the strong, and the elimination of dissidents. Is this really the only way to become a deity? Zhu Yao sighed. She had wanted to say these words a long time ago, and they were also the things that she could not understand. Everyone thinks that absolute power is the true Tao. However, I believe that these are merely the darkest parts of human nature. I only see greed, selfishness, cruelty, and violence. How can this be considered as the word deity? who still remembers that human nature still has the most basic kindness, tolerance, selflessness, and contribution. Are all of these not important? Master, are we cultivating as deities or as devils? The moment her words fell, a clear voice transmission suddenly came from the sky. That voice sounded as though it was echoing from the 9 heavens. It seemed to be very far away, yet it also felt as though it was very close to her ears. Zhu Yao felt a wave of comfortable energy circulating through her body, sweeping away the discomfort in her body. In an instant, a myriad of rays of light shone, as though an aurora had filled the entire sky. Faint fluorescent light scattered down from the horizon. That light seemed to contain some sort of unique energy. The moment it came into contact with the ground, all living things began to grow, and withered trees began to receive a new lease of life. The soil they were standing on earlier had already bloomed into a sea of flowers. Did she accidentally activate some sort of special effect? A phenomenon of heaven and earth? Yu Yan, however, deeply frowned. Such an anomaly, it must be a warning from the heavenly Tao. It seems like that day is not far away. What day was that day? You're really not following me up? Yu Yan once again asked. Zhu Yao clenched her fists and heavily shook her head. This was the first time she was truly rebelling against her own master. She felt a little guilty. She could tell that her master had spent a lot of effort in order to descend to the lower realm to fetch her, and even his cultivation had fallen back to the demigod level. However, Zhu Yao did not feel that there was anything wrong with her decision. Actually, in her own world, the term deity had always existed. In the very beginning, it only appeared in legends, and the concept was very vague. Thus, they called these legends as myths. For example, in a certain legend, a certain senior monk, or a certain Taoist had obtained the Tao and became a deity, and so on. However, in her impression, those so-called people who obtained the Tao and became deities were all extremely benevolent and powerful people. They were all people who had done a lot of good deeds in that era, or in the legends. The standard for becoming a deity was to accumulate merits, while the deities in the myths and legends were all people who took it upon themselves to save the world, and the things they spread were filled with positive energy. However, she had never heard of anyone becoming a deity by killing a lot of people or robbing a lot of treasures. That was why she began to doubt this world. Furthermore, just from Sesame and her master's words, even after ascending to the heaven realm, the concept of strength being respected did not seem to have changed the slightest bit. Then it was the same no matter where she went. Yu Yan let out a long sigh. A hint of fatigue was revealed on his face. His lips moved, as though he still wanted to say something, but in the end he simply reached out his hand to stroke her head. The expression in his eyes grew deeper, and after hesitating for a moment, he finally could not help but step forward and pull her into his embrace. An extremely bright white pillar of light descended from the sky, and instantly enveloped his body. This was the light of guidance. In the first place, he had forcefully descended to the lower realm this time, so there was a limit to how long he could stay here, and now he no longer had the time. No matter what you think, you must not slack off in your cultivation. I will wait for you. Chapter 118. Yes. Zhu Yao nodded heavily. This time, she did not need him to steal her scent, as she immediately leaned forward and planted her lips on his, hugging him tightly. Until his figure became fainter and fainter, he said, "Call me anytime if you need anything." Finally, he disappeared into the light pillar. Zhu Yao stood in her original spot. An object appeared in her hands, and it was even the jade pendant that she was exceptionally familiar with. Zhu Yao could not help but raise the corner of her lips. He raised his head to look at the sky, which had returned to its peaceful state. After a long time, he slowly lowered his head. Walking back to her room, she felt a little cold and cheerless. She pulled up the veil on the bed that had previously covered her body. Only then did she realize that she had regretted it. Damn it, it was such a good opportunity just now, and she actually missed it just like that. It was not easy for her to see her master, so shouldn't she be pushing him down any minute now? She actually only remembered to talk about principles with him, and forgot the most important thing. "Master, come back." Zhu Yao stayed in this peach garden for exactly 7 days before Sesame finally woke up. A month later, Ying finally opened his eyes. At that time in the severed land, the three of them were injured, but she was the one with the most serious injuries. However, because of her master, her injuries had completely healed. Over the past month, she had not been idle. Instead, she had been working hard on her cultivation. She vaguely felt that the current situation was definitely not optimistic. Even her master had sensed it, and came down to the mortal world to warn her. It could be seen that many things had happened in the 1,000 years she was in the scroll. Although she was a soul formation cultivator, she couldn't withstand a single blow from that black shadow. If she didn't continue to cultivate, she wouldn't even be able to protect herself, let alone the people behind her. Not mentioning anything else, the battle between Mu Meiyan and Yu Hanxin had definitely reached its climax. She hesitated. She decided to return to Jade Forest Sect first. She decided to tell Zmo about the matter regarding the shadow, so that he could make preparations early. After all, Ancient Hill was the #1 sect in the cultivation world. Adding that he had stopped Mu Meiyan's attempt to take over his body back then with his divine sense. She must have resented him and schemed against him both openly and secretly. Since she had already decided, Zhu Yao did not stay any longer. She had Sesame enter her divine sense, carried Ying, and flew towards the direction of Ancient Hill sect. She was anxious to know the current situation, so the speed of her flying sword naturally increased a lot. But when he passed by a narrow valley, sensing the touch of his divine sense, Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. She turned to look at one of the caves below, as though something was calling out to her from there. However, she was in a rush to return to Jade Forest Mountain, and did not want to delay any longer. Just as she was about to fly past, after some thought, he turned around and headed towards the cave. After that, she rejoiced that she had turned back and avoided a tragedy. It was a simple cave, and there wasn't any spiritual energy gathered around it. However, upon entering, the cave was filled with the aura of evil cultivators. A wretched man in green clothes was half kneeling on the ground. The clothes on the lower half of his body had already been removed, only revealing the disgusting thing between his legs. Underneath him was a man who was obviously heavily injured. A white-robed female cultivator, and that face little radish. Zhu Yao instantly felt boundless fury rising from the depths of her heart. With a wave of her hand, wind blades carrying heavy spiritual energy were swung towards the heretic practitioner, instantly suppressing him against the wall. Lightning sparks gathered in her palms. It went straight for his Dantian, Blood Sea, and Primordial Spirit. He directly destroyed his nascent soul cultivation. That man groaned and puked out large mouthfuls of blood. However, he was directly pressed onto the ground by her pressure, and was unable to move. Little radish. Zhu Yao walked towards her disciple whose clothes were already in a mess, and her hands could not help but tremble a little. Good thing. Good thing. Good thing she made it in time. Good thing she did not immediately fly over. Yu Yao's consciousness seemed to be a little blurry, as she slowly turned to look at her, and muttered, "Must her." In the next instant, she had already fainted. Zhu Yao's heart ached, and she felt a lingering fear as she handed Ying over to Sesame. She hurriedly helped her to tie her clothes back one by one. Only when she was properly dressed did she carry her unconscious disciple up, and turned to look at the heretic practitioner on the ground. With a flick of her fingers, she instantly confiscated his criminal tools, and casually shattered his spirit vein. No matter how high a person's cultivation was, he was still a rapist. When Yu Yao woke up, she was on her own bed. It was not the soft mattress she had slept on for close to 1,000 years, but the flat wooden bed. She's back? Yu Yao was a little dazed for a moment, and a heart-wrenching pain came from the depths of her heart. Everything that happened in the past few years was like a dream. She could not believe that it ended just like that, and it was even in such a manner. Her expression suddenly changed. That heretic practitioner. She hurriedly checked her own body, only to realize that there was nothing strange at all. And before she fainted, she seemed to have seen. Master. Yu Yao suddenly sat up and rushed out of the room. In the courtyard, a woman was currently drinking tea. She was dressed in a pink gown. and it was so clean that not a single speck of dust could be seen on it. However, her long hair hung loosely on her shoulders. She loved cleanliness, and used the dirt removal art more frequently than anyone else. However, she was not good at tidying her own hair, and every time she tied her hair up, it would always look half dead. When she was young, whenever she went out, she would always coax her with sweets, and help her tie up her hair. She was also a glutton, but hated using the body cleansing art. She would rather use her own spiritual energy to grow various vegetables and fruits, and coax her into making various delicious food for her. Most importantly, she was very protective. Every time she was bullied, she would be even more anxious than herself. She would think of ways to help her bully her back. However, someone like her suddenly disappeared, and she left for 1,000 years. Master, she was a little afraid. What if it wasn't? Zhu Yao turned her head, and the corner of her lips formed a long arc. Raising her hand, she greeted. Yo, little radish, you're awake. Yu Yao felt that the scene in front of her suddenly became blurry, as though the pressure that had accumulated in the depths of her heart had suddenly found an outlet to vent out. Her tears uncontrollably flowed out. This gave Zhu Yao a fright. What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Yu Yao, however, could not stop it no matter what, as more and more tears poured out. Unable to hold it in any longer, she pounced over, hugged onto her own master, and cried her heart out. It's fine, it's fine. Don't cry, don't cry. At that moment, Zhu Yao was a little flustered as well. Could it be that the impact of encountering a heretic practitioner was too great? Master, master, master. Yu Yao, however, cried even more agitatedly, as she called out to her while sobbing. Why did you only return now? Something happened. Who knew that 1,000 years would pass in a blink of an eye? Zhu Yao patted on her back, in an attempt to stabilize her emotions. This little radish, in her entire life, she had never cried so miserably before. Even when she was looked down upon because of her spirit veins in the past, she had never been like this. In the end, she was the one who brought up her childishness. It really made one's heart ache. This time, Yu Yao cried for exactly 6 hours, before she finally stopped. In the end, Yu Ying, who had been standing at the side the entire time, was a little tired from standing. Most probably after bringing him along for so many days, he had developed a little territorial awareness. He climbed onto her lap, and conveniently pushed away Yu Yao, who was hugging onto her without letting go. Only then did Yu Yao stop her flood-like tears. Seeing that she had finally calmed down for a moment, Zhu Yao poured a cup of spiritual tea for her, and casually asked, Just what happened? Why are you alone? Where's Wusong? Isn't he with you? The moment her words fell, Yu Yao, whose expression was still a little warm earlier, instantly paled. Even the hand which was holding onto the teacup trembled for a moment. Zhu Yao faintly had a bad premonition. What happened? Did something happen to him? Or is there a problem with Azure Flight Sect? No. Yu Yao drank a mouthful of tea, and her expression turned even uglier. Azure Flight Sect is pretty good. He is pretty good as well. Zhu Yao's expression sank, as she looked straight at Little Radish. He let you down. She used a definite sentence. Yu Yao's hand trembled, and the teacup instantly fell onto the table. The spiritual tea, which carried spiritual energy, spilled all over the table. Yu Yao wiped it with a flustered look. I didn't do it on purpose. Master, please don't blame me. I will immediately wipe it clean. Radish. A nameless flame instantly rose in Zhu Yao's chest, as she pulled up her disciple, whose face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. I will accompany you to castrate him. Recently, Zhu Yao was a little troubled. After returning from 1,000 years of time difference, she realized that the people had changed. Many things had begun to deviate from their original course. For example, Little Radish. For example, Wusong. If it was in the past, even if she was beaten to death, she would not believe that Wusong would have a change of heart. Back then, when the two of them were together, she could see that Wusong's feelings for Radish were sincere. However, no matter how deep the feelings were, most probably, they would not be able to withstand the erosion of time. To her, she had just handed Radish to Wusong the day before yesterday, yet he threw it away the next day. That was why she was so furious. She wanted to find him to settle the debt. However, Yu Yao was unwilling, and had even knelt in front of her for this matter, begging for her forgiveness. Only then did she recall that to her, it had only been a day, but to them, it had already been 1,000 years. What could she forgive her for? Clearly, she did not do anything wrong at all. At this moment, she was a little regretful that she had taught Radish too well. She did not even have the slightest bit of resentment, let alone hatred. What she regretted even more was that back then, she had easily allowed the relationship between the two of them to develop, and had even added fuel to the fire. Since I no longer have a place in his heart, even if I force it, what's the point? Radish lightly said these words. Clearly in her heart, she, who would forever be a child in reality, her heart had already experienced many vicissitudes. For a moment, Zhu Yao did not know what to do either. Only she knew the warmth and coldness of a relationship. Outsiders basically could not interfere. In the end, why did she have a screw loose back then? Chapter 119. The jade pendant emitted a faint white light. Not long after, like a three-dimensional projection, a small, white figure appeared on top of the jade pendant. His face was still cold as usual. He looked at his disciple who was lying weakly on the table. He couldn't help but raise his hand to touch her head, but he could only touch an empty space. Her voice unwittingly softened a little. What is it? Zhu Yao curled her lips. This disciple has fallen out of love. Yu Yan was startled for a moment. His eyes, which had just softened earlier, suddenly turned sharp, and faintly emitted a hint of coldness. Jilted? When did she fall in love again? Therefore the cold air spread everywhere. Zhu Yao's hand trembled. Did he have to suddenly become this terrifying? I'm talking about my disciple. My disciple. That child you helped me take in back then, your grand disciple. Yu Yan paused for a moment, and the cold aura around him instantly disappeared completely. With a lack of interest he responded. Amen. Whatever grand disciple, it seemed like it had nothing to do with him. I had originally saved a child, and seeing that he and Yu Luo were friends, I betrothed her to him. Zhu Yao recalled what happened back then, and faintly felt that she was too rash. Initially, she thought that she still had time to examine him again, but she did not expect that 1,000 years had passed just like that. But now that child has fallen in love with another woman. According to Radish, that mistress was even saved by Wu Song himself. Yu Yan frowned. Since they're friends, why would he fall in love with another woman? To him, this was a little ridiculous. He said that the relationship between him and Yu Luo was merely that of a brother and sister. Excuses, Yu Yan coldly said. Zhu Yao could not help but let out a bitter laugh as well. She did not expect that her master, who originally did not have much EQ, could actually see that this was just an excuse for the other party to change his mind. But his disciple still couldn't see it clearly. What should we do? Yu Yan lightly said. Castrate him. Ku. Zhu Yao choked on his words. Dumbfounded, he looked at a certain someone who had a matter-of-fact expression on his face. Master, what did you say? Where's your pure and clean image? Ugh. Alright, they were indeed master and disciple. But this is Yu Luo's matter after all. Beat him until he can't take care of himself. Break his chrysanthemum. Master told me. Where did you learn all these words from? Give me back that pure and innocent master of mine. However, he only slowly turned his head and glanced at her, his eyes clearly saying, Didn't you threaten me like this too? She was guilty. Zhu Yao covered up her coughs for a few times, and only then did she manage to find her rationality in front of her master. Actually, I want master to teach me how to refine artifacts. Originally, he just wanted to complain to his master, but who knew that the situation would change so quickly? It was better to return to the main topic. Refining artifacts. Yu Yan frowned. Right now you should quickly raise your cultivation and ascend. I'm still young. Zhu Yao chuckled. She did not wish to once again fall into the debate earlier, and recalled that shadow once again. Master, didn't you say that the reason why that shadow was following Mu Meiyan was because he had signed a blood contract with her? Amen. Yu Yan nodded. The blood contract is born from the original owner, and although the 5 elemental magic has a certain amount of damage, most of it will only affect the host. That person must have done something to the host's body to remove all damage before he was dispelled. That's why it couldn't be removed from the original owner. What about forcibly separating from the outside? Yu Yan was startled for a moment, as though he was shocked by her thoughts. After a while he said, although this method of separation seems feasible in the outside world, but in this world, even if it was made from the sharpest mysterious ice-cold iron, it might not be effective. And immortal artifacts. Master, I want to try. She had already made up her mind. The biggest cheat in Mu Meiyan's hand was that black shadow, which was also the key to her becoming a bug. So what if she was reborn? She was reborn as a soul, not as a Shangji. She didn't believe that Yu Hanxin had completely defeated her in her previous life. I won't be able to suppress her. She had thought about the method her master had told her to cultivate as soon as possible. She definitely wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from the black shadow. Only then would they have a fighting chance. However, no matter how much she cultivated, she was not confident that she would be able to defeat him before she ascended. Moreover, according to the information revealed by Master, even the people from the upper realm were somewhat fearful of the black shadow. On what basis did she believe that with a period of bitter cultivation, she would be able to possess strength stronger than the deities from the upper realm? Since she couldn't win in a direct confrontation, she could only resort to tricks. Just as Zhu Yao was about to inform Yu Yan of her plans, the door was suddenly pushed open. A blue figure instantly scuttled in and pounced into Zhu Yao's embrace. Yuing? Zhu Yao looked at the child who was already hugging her tightly and was a little speechless. She casually kept her master's jade pendant back into her storage ring. Only then did Yu Yao hurriedly run over. A hint of a troubled expression flashed past her face. Master Yuing, he insisted on finding you. I couldn't stop him. Zhu Yao let out a long sigh, and for a moment, she felt a slight headache. This little child couldn't possibly have an Oedipus complex, right? Ever since he returned, he had been sticking to her, and could not be separated even for a moment. It's fine now, Yu Yao. Go and cultivate first. Have a good talk with him. This couldn't go on. She was about to go into isolation to learn how to refine artifacts. Distractions were the worst when refining artifacts. To refine a single artifact, not coming out of isolation for a year or two was a common occurrence. How could she have the time to watch over him at all times? Bending her waist, she carried Yuing up and placed him on the wooden bed at the side. Then, she casually pulled a chair over and sat in front of him. Yuing, I have something to tell you. However, as though Yuing did not hear her, he raised his hand and was about to pounce into her embrace. Yet he did not let out the slightest sound. Only then did Zhu Yao recall that he basically did not know how to speak. How was she supposed to communicate with him, hey? Yuing. Zhu Yao straightened him up and pointed at his little chest. She decided to first teach him how to speak. He tilted his head. His little face was still expressionless. Evidently he did not understand. All right. Zhu Yao's expression darkened, and then, she pointed at herself. I'm called Zhu Yao. Zhiwu Zhu Yo-Yo. Zhu Yao. Yuing was still stunned, and the corner of his lips moved. As though he had finally understood something. A moment later, he let out a yes sound. Probably because he had not spoken for too long, his voice was especially hoarse. If one did not listen carefully, one would not be able to hear it clearly. He was willing to speak. This could already be considered as a huge surprise. She had no choice but to bring him through so many things. She was really afraid that he would become autistic just like that. Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao had no choice but to teach him again and again. Yes, Yao Yo-Yo Yao. Yes, Yao. Alright, it's Yao. Zhu Yao excitedly kissed him. Taking this opportunity to teach him more, she once again pointed at himself. Yuing. Yuing. This time, Yuing did not speak, as though he did not have any feelings towards his own name at all. Zhu Yao was a little anxious, as she once again pointed at herself. Zhu Yao. Yao. She then pointed at him. Yuing. Silence. Sheesh, Did he dislike his own name that much? Zhu Yao had no choice, and could only teach him from the basics. I'm called Zhu Yao. I'm older than you, so you have to call me Big Sis. Yao. He still only knew how to say this word. Call. Big Sis. Zhu Yao still pointed at herself. Big Sis. Ying frowned, and a moment later, the corner of his lips twitched. Take Big Sis. Zhu Yao once again corrected him, and slowed down her speech. Big Sis, Big Sis. Big Sis. He finally said the correct pronunciation. However, his tone was still a little strange. Zhu Yao, however, was already very satisfied. In just a short while, she learned 2 words, and decided to help him consolidate it. Repeat after me, Big Sis Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao, Big Sis. This time Ying was really a little anxious. The corner of his lips twitched a few times, before slowly spitting out 2 words. Big Sis Yao. Flips table. Who are you scolding? You're the brothel sis. Your entire family is brothel sis. You haven't spoken for so long. Why are you scolding me the moment you speak? Zhu Yao suddenly felt as though she had lifted a rock and smashed it onto her own feet. And it was even a little painful. Zhu Yao had already returned for 2 days. Yu Yao looked rather happy on the surface, but a hint of sadness would occasionally leak out from between her brows. Zhu Yao knew that she had yet to walk out from that failed relationship with Wu Song, so she could only occasionally give her the mission of taking care of Ying, so as to distract her, and not let her indulge in it. Today, Zhu Yao decided to bring her to Zimo's place. After all, they were Little Radish's parents, so he could guide her a little. Although to her, Zmo was just an old friend whom she had not seen for a few days, in reality, more than 1,000 years had already passed. Zmo still looked like that old man, however, the spiritual energy in his body was not as dense as before. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. She could tell that he did not have much time left. The lifespan of a nascent soul practitioner was limited, however, because of the matters of the sect, Zmo had spent too much effort on it, and had never been able to break into the demigod stage. Zhu Yao looked at the happy family that had reunited together, and suddenly felt a little sour in her heart. Towards her return, Zmo seemed especially happy. Little martial ant, you're finally back. Currently, Ancient Hill Sect finally has 3 demigod sovereigns as well. 3? Wasn't it 4? Zmo's face revealed a regretful expression. Sighing, he explained. Little martial ant, there's something you don't know. 200 years ago, Sovereign Iran fell during the Ascension Lightning Tribulation. Coincidentally, you went missing again. Zmo did not continue, but the meaning behind his words was clear. The reason why Ancient Hill Sect had the achievement of being the #1 sect in the cultivation world was mainly because they had 4 demigod sovereigns. However, looking at the 4 of them, half of them were instantly gone. To Ancient Hill Sect, it was indeed quite a huge blow. Recalling Iran, Zhu Yao did not have much of an impression of him. She only remembered that he was a very amiable middle-aged man, and when he appeared, he would often ride on a jade lotus. She did not have a deep relationship with him, however, she did not expect that in the blink of an eye, he had already fallen. Compared to him, Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little ashamed. As a demigod sovereign of Ancient Hill Sect, she merely carried an empty title, and had never done anything for the sect seriously. Little martial ant, I wonder what plans do you have for the future? Zmo asked. I plan to go into closed-door training for a period of time. In the future, if she could not leave Ancient Hill Sect, it was best for her to stay here as much as possible. As expected, Zmo revealed a hint of a smile. It's naturally good that little martial ant can stay in the sect. According to rumors, Celestial Indus sect currently has 2 demigod sovereigns as well, and is on par with my sect. Now that little martial ant has returned, naturally, there's no need to worry. Celestial Indus sect? Wasn't that the sect Mumayan was in? It seemed like it was the same as the scenario. Chi-Han had already broken through into a demigod. Just as Zhu Yao was about to inquire about the details, a disciple suddenly came in to report. The sect master of Azure Flight sect had brought along a disciple and requested an audience. Azure Flight sects. Sect master? What kind of joke was this? Chapter 120. Ha ha ha. So it's Su'er. ZMO, however, seemed especially happy. Zhu Yao was completely dumbfounded. She suddenly had a bad premonition. This Azure Flight sect is a newly risen deity sect 700 years ago. Seeing that she was in a daze, ZMO thought that she did not recognize this sect, and hurriedly explained. Although this sect was established not long ago, and does not have many members, it is rather powerful. Especially during the Taesioluk secret realm back then, the 80 disciples he sent in obtained a large amount of resources, and actually returned without any injuries. That was how it gained fame in the cultivation world. Especially in these few hundred years, the top 3 of every intersect tournament would definitely be a disciple of this sect. Zemo's face was filled with a sigh of admiration. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. She turned to look at Yuluo at the side, and saw her slowly nodding. The reason was because this Azure Flight sect was the radish pit she built, and the person who came was Wu Song. But when did he become the sect master? Why didn't she, the expired sect master, know about it? Senior Martial Ant, do you want to follow me to take a look? Zemo's face was filled with excitement. After pondering for a moment, he said a little apologetically, I won't hide it from Senior Martial Ant. You left for 1,000 years. 900 years ago, this sect master Wu Song came to propose marriage to my daughter. I saw that he was a promising talent, and he was sincere towards my daughter, so I decided on this marriage on my own accord. I didn't have the time to inform Senior Martial Ant. Although he was Yuluo's parent, in the cultivation world, the inheritance of master and disciple had always been passed down. Especially when it came to choosing a lifelong partner, logically speaking, the personal succeeding master had to agree to it. Zhu Yao looked at Yuluo at the side, whose face was filled with pain, and her expression instantly darkened a little. Only then did she find out that Yuluo and Wu Song were still engaged. He actually dared to cheat on her so brazenly. At that moment, she was a little angry that she was really blind back then. All right, I will follow you to take a look. She wanted to see what kind of ungrateful wretch Wu Song had grown into after 1,000 years. Little radish, follow me. Yuluo's expression paled. Yet, she still nodded and followed along. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, and cast a concealment art on herself, concealing her figure. Although ZMO felt a little strange after thinking about it, he most likely wanted to test his son-in-law, so he did not make a sound. They sat in the main hall for a while. A group of people walked in majestically. As expected, the one in the lead was Wu Song. Compared to before, he was quite a bit taller, and had lost some of his immaturity. Instead, he had gained some calmness, and there was spiritual energy circulating around his body. That spiritual energy was different from normal spiritual energy, as it seemed to be mixed with something else. Zhu Yao could not really tell what it was, but there was a feeling of disharmony within it. After taking a closer look, she realized that he was actually at the late-stage nascent soul stage. Following behind him was a group of familiar faces. It was Radish number 1, 2, 3, and 4. They had all grown up. In the past, he thought that radishes all looked the same, but now that he looked at them, he felt that they all had their own characteristics. All of them were at the early nascent soul realm. In the blink of an eye, her line of sight landed on a woman who was leaning on Wu Song half a step behind him. When she saw her face clearly, Zhu Yao instantly felt as though she had swallowed a fly. Mumayan, why is this bug here? I greet Reverend ZMO. Wu Song cupped his fists and bowed. Son-in-law, you don't have to be so polite. ZMO cheerfully took a step forward. His face was filled with a smile. Earlier, Yuluo had yet to tell ZMO about the problem between the two of them. We're all family. Come, come, come. Sit, sit. A hint of awkwardness flashed past Wu Song's face. Even the faces of the people behind him revealed a hint of guilt. Turning his head, he glanced at Yuluo, who was standing next to ZMO, and called out with a sunken voice. Yuluo. Yuluo frowned, and turned her head away. Wu Song sighed. Pulling the woman behind him, he sat at the side. His actions of protecting another woman made ZMO feel a little dissatisfied. However, he suppressed the suspicions in the depths of his heart. Su'er, I wonder why you've come to Ancient Hill Sect this time? Wu Song's expression grew even more troubled, and for a moment, he did not know what to say. Mu Meiyan at the side, however, lightly pulled him. Only then did Wu Song turn around and give her a smile. Only then did he make up his mind. The reason why I've come today is because I wish to cancel the engagement with your sex Yuluo. What? This time, Ziamo was truly stunned, as he looked at him with a face of disbelief. Could there be some sort of misunderstanding? Wu Song's expression grew even uglier, as he once again glanced at Mu Meiyan at the side. Sect Master Ziamo, back then, I wasn't sensible, and mistook the relationship between siblings as feelings, delaying Lady Yuluo. Fortunately, I came to my senses in time, please forgive me. Ziamo's expression instantly turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. Clenching the fists by his side, a huge amount of anger surged, making him wish that he could beat him up. Come to his senses? What did he treat his own daughter as? Some sort of demonic barrier. He still had to wait until he came to his senses. A woman's reputation was especially important. If he were to cancel the engagement today, had he ever thought about how big of an impact it would have on Yuluo? Although the engagement between the two of them was not announced to the various sects, the fact that Yuluo had been staying in Azure Flight sect for the past few years was known by the entire cultivation world. It wasn't hard to guess what was going on between the two of them. Sect Master Wu. Ziamo took in a deep breath, and only then did he stabilize his temper that was about to explode. Back then, when you came to propose, this wasn't what you said. You swore frankly that you would treat my daughter well, and never let her down. Only then did I hand my daughter over to you. But in the blink of an eye, you've gone back on your words. Who do you think I Ziamo am? Is my daughter someone you can simply trample on like this? That's not what I meant. Wu Song was a little anxious. In the first place, he was in the wrong in this matter. No matter how beautiful his words were, it was merely a quibble. If that's not what you meant, then what do you mean? Ziamo coldly snorted. His sharp eyes looked towards the weak and frail woman at the side, and a wave of pressure was released. I think it's this monster who's causing trouble. Although Mu Meiyan had a nascent soul stage cultivation, after all, she was only at the mid-stages. For a moment, she was unable to endure the pressure of a late-stage nascent soul stage practitioner, and took 2 steps back. Wu Song's heart immediately ached. Grabbing onto her hand, he dispelled her discomfort. At that moment, he was a little furious as well. Sect Master Ziamo, what's the meaning of this? This matter has nothing to do with Yen. Why must you make a move against her? Ziamo coldly snorted. He had merely released his pressure, yet he was already this anxious. If he said that it had nothing to do with her, who would believe him? Mu Meiyan at the side took the opportunity to lean into Wu Song's embrace. A hint of something flashed past her eyes, however. She immediately changed into a pitiful expression. She then suddenly turned her head towards Yuluo at the back, and said, Big sis Yuluo, it's all my fault. I beg of you, don't make things difficult for Big Brother Su. I know I shouldn't snatch Big Brother Su from you, but matters of the heart cannot be forced. Big Brother Su has always treated you like an elder sister, and has taken care of you for so many years. Are you really that heartless, to want to kill us? She spoke with sincerity, and adding that expression, she looked as though she was being bullied. Yet, she was unwilling to retaliate. Yet her words were actually scolding Yuluo for being ungrateful. Clearly, he had never treated you sincerely, yet, you were still pestering Wu Song, refusing to let go. Zhu Yao could not help but praise her superb acting skills. As expected, Yuluo took 2 steps back out of anger after being reprimanded by the other party. Wu Song's expression, however, grew even more pained, as he glared at Yuluo with a little anger. Yuluo, back then, I had already told you very clearly. I only have Yen'er in my heart. Why are you still acting like this? Yuluo's face no longer had the slightest hint of blood. She clearly did not do anything, yet, she was forcefully labeled as a villain by the two of them. She could not help but move her lips, as though she wanted to explain something. However, she was interrupted by Mu Meiyan. Big Brother Su, don't blame Big Sis Yuluo. It's my fault. It's my fault. Yin. Wu Song grew even more furious, as he ruthlessly glared at Yu Luo. Yu Luo, I really did not expect that you would be such a person. Yu Luo's pale face instantly paled, and her face was filled with despair. A clear and cold voice suddenly resounded. What kind of person is she? In an instant, the pressure of a demigod came assaulting from all directions. Along with Wu Song, the two of them were ruthlessly pressed onto the ground. Zhu Yao removed the blinding mystic art and slowly revealed her figure. She had watched enough of the 8 o'clock movie. It was time to take care of this dog. Zhu Yao walked over one step at a time, completely ignoring Wu Song's expression, which looked as though he had seen a ghost. With emphasis on every single word, she asked, Wu Song, just what kind of person do you think my Yu Luo is? That little radish who, even when she was wronged, still protected him. She treated him with sincerity, yet he treated her in such a manner. He really wanted to see just what kind of ingrate 1,000 years of time could turn him into. So, sovereign. Wu Song completely did not expect that she would appear here. Clearly, she had disappeared for 1,000 years, and even he had thought that she had long fallen. Why would she suddenly appear here? And it was even when he was here to cancel the engagement. He could not help but recall the scene of Zhu Yao handing little radish over to him back then in Azure Flight. For a moment, Wu Song did not know what to say. In the depths of his heart, he was feeling a little guilty towards Yu Luo in the first place, and earlier, it was just a moment of anger. Now that he saw her and recalled the matters of the past, he felt even more guilty. Though radish number 1 to 4 at the side had faces filled with disbelief. They opened their mouths, as though they wanted to call out something. However, after hurriedly glancing at Wu Song in front of them, they shut their mouths one after another. It's you. Though, Mu Meiyan exclaimed out. Others might not know the reason behind Zhu Yao's sudden disappearance, but she was extremely clear of it. A hint of panic was clearly revealed on her face. How could you possibly be here? Why can't this sovereign be here? Zhu Yao replied with a laugh. It has been a long time since we last met, Celestial Indus Sect Master's daughter, Miss Ru. The moment her words fell, Mu Meiyan's expression instantly paled. Everyone present looked at Mu Meiyan on the ground with shocked expressions, and all of them had looks of disbelief. Celestial Indus Sect's daughter? How is that possible? Radish number 2 regained his senses after seeing Zhu Yao's expression, and muttered, Isn't she eldest senior martial sister's friend? I heard that Rulu of Celestial Indus Sect had long been expelled from the sect. That's right. I heard that it was because she harmed her fellow sect members. P.S. When everyone reads this chapter, I will already be on the plane. Really? Chapter 121. Sovereign Zhu Yao. Wu Song frowned, regaining his senses from the initial shock. Although he was still pressed onto the ground, he still struggled to reply. Yen Er's original name is Mu Meiyan, and is the head disciple of our Azure Flight sect's predecessor, Azure Melancholy sect. Back then, she was chased by a heretic practitioner, and only managed to reincarnate back into the sect after narrowly escaping death. They aren't from the Celestial Indus sect that you mentioned. Really? Zhu Yao coldly laughed. Earlier, when she heard Wu Song call her Yen Er, she had already guessed that Mu Meiyan did not use the original identity of this body she had taken over. However, she never expected that she would actually be expelled from Celestial Indus sect. It seemed like the battle between her and Yu Hanshin in these past 1,000 years was really intense, and she was even in a disadvantageous position. Whether it's true or false, why don't we invite the sect master of the Celestial Indus sect to make a trip here, and we'll know. If you think about it, our ancient hill sect still has that much face. As expected, Mu Meiyan's face instantly paled. Her eyes flashed and she immediately replied, No need. Yin. Wu Song had also guessed that this might be the truth, and his face was filled with disbelief. Mu Meiyan clenched her teeth. She knew best who she was. However, her current body was indeed green. This was a fact that she could not deny. She took a deep breath and restrained all her emotions. She turned to look at Wu Song, and tears instantly flowed out. Her face was filled with innocence and sadness. Big brother Wu Song, I'm sorry. I was indeed called Rulu before, But I didn't do what the rumors said. I was also framed. Please believe me, Sister Meiyan and I have known each other since we were young, and we are as close as sisters. You all mistook me for her. I also wanted to do something for Meiyan who had passed away, so I did not deny it. All these years, have I ever done anything to let you down? Her words were said very skillfully. Firstly, she overthrew the rumors that she was a traitor of the Celestial Indus sect. Furthermore, the former Azure Melancholy sect and Celestial Indus sect did indeed have some friendly relations. Thus, it could be explained that she knew the eldest disciple of the former Azure Melancholy sect, Mu Meiyan. Furthermore, she had also expressed that she was actually doing a good deed for her good sister. Sure enough, once these words came out, Wu Song's heart immediately softened. He looked at her with a pained expression. Damn this green tea bitch. If she wanted to make a comeback, it would depend on whether she was willing or not. Although she had that powerful black shadow as a cheat, she did not see the black shadow appear. She was sure that the black shadow was not here at the moment. Either that, or he was heavily injured in the scroll and couldn't appear. That was the reason why Mu Meiyan had been in such a miserable state all these years, and was even chased out of the Celestial Indus sect. It was just that he did not expect that she would be able to hook up with Wu Song. Recalling the entanglement between her and Wu Song in her dream, Zhu Yao felt a little frustrated. Could it be that the plot couldn't be reversed? Wu Song would still fall in love with Mu Meiyan? Brother Wu Song, please believe me. Mu Meiyan was still trying her best to gain Wu Song's trust. She and Yu Hanxin were already incompatible like fire and water, and only Azure Flight was a safe place. She would definitely not let go. She glanced at Zhu Yao at the side, and in the depths of her heart, she could not help but secretly hate him. She had long known that this person would be her biggest obstacle, which was why she made the first move. He sent Phantom to kill her, but he didn't expect her to be so lucky. Actually, Wu Song's heart had already softened a long time ago. He was even willing to fall out with Ancient Hill sect for her. It could be seen that he was sincere towards her. I believe you. Of course I believe you. Don't worry, I'll protect you. When his words fell, the expressions of the few radishes behind him instantly turned a little ugly, and they even faintly looked at Zhu Yao with awkward expressions. Putting aside whether what she said was true or not, just based on her identity as a traitor of the Celestial Indus sect, this would bring disaster to the Azure Flight sect. Azure Flight had countless high-level demonic beasts guarding the mountain, and it was now known as the strongest mountain protection array in the cultivation world. He was not afraid of external attacks, but his reputation would always be affected. He thought of the protective mountain array. The crowd could not help but look at Zhu Yao again. Others might not know, but they clearly knew that she was the one who placed down this formation. Sovereign. Wu Song supported Rulu and stood up. Although Zhu Yao's pressure had already been retracted, he still felt a little guilty towards this sovereign, though he did not think that there was anything wrong with choosing his true love. The reason why we came here today is to dissolve the engagement between me and Lady Yuluo. It was indeed this Su who misspoke first. I will do my best to make it up to her. Wu Song took out a storage pouch and passed it to Yuluo. I believe these should be able to make it up to you a little. Make it up to you. Yuluo was already on the verge of collapsing, as she looked at his expression with a pained expression. Wu Song, what do you take me for? Yuluo? Wu Song's hands trembled. He did not have the intention to humiliate her, but his actions had clearly revealed this point. After so many years, Yuluo had always been by his side, and they more or less had feelings for each other. Looking at her sad look, he could not help but feel his heart ache as well. Big brother Wu. Mu Meiyan called out. Only then did Wu Song seem to have made up his mind, as he placed the storage pouch at the side. No matter what, our engagement is over. Engagement? Since when did my disciple have an engagement with you? Zhu Yao could not help but speak up, as she coldly laughed. Wu Song was startled, as though he did not know why she would ask such a question. Sect Master Wu, you have never mentioned marriage to my Jade Forest Mountain before, so where did this engagement come from? I asked Sect Master ZMO. Zhu Yao immediately interrupted him. Yu Luo is my personal succeeding disciple. As a sect master, don't you understand the rules of the cultivation world? Wu Song was completely blocked off. Indeed, according to the rules of the cultivation world, since Yu Luo was her personal succeeding disciple, then everything about her should be decided by her, let alone a huge matter as large as this? You actually never mention marriage, and I didn't agree to it either. How can there be such a thing as annulling the engagement? He cheated on her, and he even wanted Yu Luo to be the scapegoat. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Could it be that Sect Master Wu wants to go through the entire process in one go, and go through the entire process of proposing and annulling the engagement? Sect Master Wu, you're fooling me like this. What kind of place do you take my Jade Forest Mountain to be? I didn't mean it that way. Wu Song grew anxious. Senior. Mu Meiyan seemed to want to say something. Shut up. Zhu Yao, however, immediately sent a wave of pressure towards him. And who are you? Is it even your turn to speak at a time like this? Under her attack, there were already traces of blood at the corner of Mu Meiyan's lips. Though Wu Song was worried, he still did not say anything, and simply tried his best to explain. Sovereign, you haven't returned for so many years. I just want to. I don't care what you want to do. Zhu Yao immediately interrupted his words. Picking up the storage pouch on the table, she frowned, and threw it back. Take your things away. I won't agree to this marriage. The descendant of Jade Forest Mountain is not something that just anyone can afford to be associated with. Wu Song was given the cold shoulder. Initially, he wanted to annul the marriage, yet Zhu Yao had secretly changed the concept into him being rejected. He had lost a huge amount of face for nothing, and in an instant his expression turned ugly. However, after all, the person in front of him had done him a favor, and he had indeed done some disgraceful things while she wasn't around. Hence he did not refute, as he cupped his fists and bid farewell, intending to return. The remaining radishes number 1 to 4 solemnly bowed towards Zhu Yao as well. Their emotions were still rather complicated. Though Wu Song was already the sect master, and was acknowledged by them, Zhu Yao was after all, the founder of Azure Flight. In the past, when she went missing, it was still alright, but now that she suddenly appeared again, their position was instantly awkward. Wait. Before they left, they were once again stopped by Zhu Yao. Wu Song and the rest stopped in their tracks, and turned their heads around. There's something I wish to ask the sect master of Azure Flight sect. She intentionally emphasized the word sect master, and spoke with a smile that was not a smile. Is your esteemed sect planning to change its name to Azure Melancholy Sect? When these words fell, not only Wu Song, even the expressions of the few radishes at the side, turned a little ugly. Wu Song kept saying that he saved Mu Meiyan because he treated her as the eldest disciple of the previous sect master. After finding out her identity, he continued to tolerate her because of her identity as the eldest disciple's good friend. However, he had forgotten that they were currently Azure Flight sect, and no longer the Azure Melancholy sect of the past. How could this excuse possibly work? Regarding Mu Meiyan being the eldest disciple of the Azure Melancholy sect's sect master, Zhu Yao had actually faintly guessed it as well. In the past, she did not intentionally recall that dream. After all, ever since she took in little radishes as her disciple, the entire matter had already deviated from its original trajectory. And back then, when she went to save those 82 little radishes, she faintly felt that the name Azure Melancholy sect was a little familiar. However, she never expected that Azure Melancholy sect was actually the family of the female antagonist in her past life that was destroyed. This time, when she saw her together with Wu Song, she suddenly recalled this matter. In her past life, the female antagonist's entire family was destroyed, which was why she relied on Celestial Indus sect, and became Chi Han's disciple. And after she was reborn, she returned to the past. Due to the laws of space, it was impossible for two people with the same soul to exist at the same time. Hence, in this life, she died while fleeing for her life. And she, who had already cultivated to the nascent soul stage in her past life, had the chance to take over someone else's body. Actually, when she saved those radishes back then, she had suspected why those who stayed there were all low-leveled disciples with mediocre spirit veins. while not a single elite disciple could be seen. From the looks of it now, it wasn't that the sect was small and did not have elite disciples, but rather those elite disciples, along with Mu Meiyan herself, had long escaped. The little radishes she saved were actually abandoned by the sect, and were locked inside to wait for their deaths. Back then, she had even thought that this sect was rather humane. However, from the looks of it now, they were extremely selfish. Most probably, it was because that shadow was heavily injured in the ancient scroll, and in these 1,000 years he did not help her much, which was why she was forced to leave Celestial Indus sect. Most probably, she was simply following her memories, and wanted to return to the already destroyed Azure Melancholy sect, only to realize that her own sect was still alive. And the reason why Mu Meiyan stayed behind was because the current Azure Flight had a powerful mountain barrier formation formed by those high-level demonic beasts, which could protect her from being discovered by Celestial Indus sect. Hence, with her original identity as Mu Meiyan, she stayed behind. Actually, if she had obediently stayed in Azure Flight, Zhu Yao would not have said anything. After all, that place was once her home. However, she definitely should not have stirred up the relationship between Wu Song and Yu Luo. Chapter 122. Zhu Yao felt that she had provoked enough. Pulling Yu Yao, who was at the side, she took a step out of the great hall. After walking a few steps, she turned around and added, "Oh right, congratulations Sect Master Wu for finding your true love. Although she has already lost her primordial Yin, I believe you won't mind, right?" When these words fell, Mu Meiyan's expression instantly paled as well. Zhu Yao, however, flew back to Jade Forest Mountain in a rather good mood. The matter of Mu Meiyan losing her primordial Yin was actually a guess of hers. After all, in her dreams, she had never given up on seducing Yu Hanqing's men, and had used all sorts of methods. It had already been 1,000 years. She refused to believe that Mu Meiyan could still maintain her virginity. The result was extremely good. She had guessed correctly. The cultivation world placed a lot of importance on duo-pair companions. As long as the contract was sealed, it could not be removed without death. A woman's primordial Yin would usually only be given to the duo pair. Any other abnormal relationships would be treated as a furnace. Hence, Wu Song's rejection of the marriage would definitely bring about a huge impact on Yu Yao. With her identity as a personal succeeding master, Zhu Yao denied this marriage, and secretly changed the concept to Yu Yao looking down on him, rejecting the marriage. And it was also because of this reason. And ZMO was present back then as well. He would definitely be very willing to exaggerate this matter and spread it out. Wu Song was also a sect master, though she did not know how he managed to surpass her and become one. However, when one's status was high, there would always be some scruples. A dignified sect master being rejected was definitely not a good thing to hear. Furthermore, the one she had always thought of as her true love had long given her body to someone else. She wondered in this life, under the premise that Mu Meiyan did not save his life, nor was she the white moonlight in his heart, how far could their so-called true love go? Of course, they could also suspect that she was speaking nonsense, as no one could tell if someone else's primordial Yin was still there with a single glance. However, she was someone from Jade Forest Mountain, and Jade Forest Mountain was unfathomable in the first place in the cultivation world. Even if what she said was fake, others would definitely guess that it was real. Furthermore, with Mu Meiyan's expression, it was real and not fake. Mu Meiyan had always thought that all her tragedies were caused by Yu Hanqing, this Mary Sue. However, although Yu Hanqing was a little hesitant towards her feelings, and had left her lovers everywhere, at the very least, she was a pure person, and did not do anything. Both men and women, one was willing to hit, and the other was willing to suffer. What did this have to do with you, a passerby? If Mu Meiyan hadn't been so jealous in her previous life, she wouldn't have ended up like that. Thank you, master. Yu Luo lifted the corners of her lips, as if she wanted to smile. But he couldn't smile at all. Thank me for what? Zhu Yao turned to look at her. Yu Luo lowered her head. Thank you, master, for saving this disciple's face. Sigh. Zhu Yao knew that she was currently feeling terrible in her heart, and had no choice but to step forward and hug her. Just like how she did when she was young, she stroked her head. Little radish, it's not easy to find a three-legged toad, but two-legged men are everywhere. Yuluo looked at her. But I can't let it go. I don't understand why our feelings of so many years can't be defeated. How many years have they spent together? Why don't you get over it? He can let go of the feelings you have for so many years, and he can also let go of other feelings. You just woke up one step earlier. Yuluo fell silent. When she thought of that Mu Meiyan, her eyes sank a little. Why did he want to save that person? Yuluo. Zhu Yao's expression turned stern, and said with a sunken voice. Do you think all of this is because of that woman? But it was only after she came. If it wasn't her, it could have been someone else. Yuluo. If a dog wants to bite someone, it's not determined by the thickness of the rope tied to it. It will bite. In the end, it will bite, but it won't bite. Even if you don't tie it up, it will only wag its tail when it sees people. Do you understand? Yuluo's face was filled with confusion. But in the past, before you bought a dog, you didn't know if this dog would only bite or not bite when it grows up, right? So in the end, she brought the wrong dog, and even walked it right in front of Yuluo. Yuluo fell silent, as though she understood his words. The resentful expression that had just surfaced on her face slowly faded. Yuluo. Zhu Yao patted on her head. Master knows you're feeling terrible, but the truth has already come to this. There's no point in thinking about it. There are some things, it's not because you're not good enough, but because you've done too well, causing you to lose your original pride. Why do you have to grieve over the person who trampled on your pride? Actually, relationships are like investments. Zhu Yao continued to explain. When you've invested a lot, yet there's still no returns. It's not that the market isn't good, but the person you're investing in isn't worth it. But right now, you still have the time to recoup your investment. Why don't you change to another person and try again? What's investment? Yuluo was stunned for a moment. She habitually used the way she comforted her best friend. Yeah, I'm saying that Wusong isn't worthy of you liking him at all. There are a lot of good men lining up behind him, waiting for you to pity them, so don't hang yourself on one tree. Why don't you try hanging a few more? Master. Seeing that her persuasion was getting more and more hilarious, Yuluo's expression finally turned a little better. She could not help but mutter. How can you ask your disciple to hang herself? Wasn't that just a metaphor? In any case, a woman has to treat herself better. Understand? Yuluo's expression sank. A moment later she nodded. Amen, Master. I will try my best to forget him. Good girl. As expected, she understood. Oh right. Why is your cultivation only at the late stage Azoth stage? Logically speaking, even those little turnips were already at the nascent soul stage. With the aptitude of her disciple's single spirit vein, no matter what, she should be at the nascent soul stage and above. Even if she wasn't a demigod, at the very least, she should be at the late stage nascent soul stage like Wusong. Yuluo's expression was a little pale. A moment later, she carefully replied. I was initially already at the nascent soul stage. However, back then when Wusong saved that Mu Meiyan, he was heavily injured. In order to save him, You couldn't have given him your primordial Yin, right? Zhu Yao fiercely stood up. The hell, that scumbag. No, I didn't. Yuluo hurriedly explained. Back then, I had used up all of the spiritual energy in my body. However, when I was about to finish healing my injuries, I was interrupted by someone, causing my meridians to flow in reverse, and my cultivation was damaged. When she was circulating her energy, Mu Meiyan suddenly barged in, However, she did not explain this matter clearly, as she was afraid that her master would be angry. Zhu Yao's brows were already furrowed into a crease, and she had the urge to rape someone's chrysanthemum at any moment. Were all men who approached Mu Meiyan a scumbag? Little Radish saved him, yet he actually had the face to cheat on her. Bitch. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have saved him back then. Zhu Yao felt a little frustrated. Ever since she came out from that scroll, things were getting more and more out of her control. The ending of her dreams, the driving force of striding forward, however, She was completely helpless. Suddenly, she thought of something. You guys are still in contact with Chen Ning, Zhu Yao said with certainty. Back then, when Wu Song took out the storage pouch that he said was his compensation, she scanned through it with her divine sense and realized that there were a few mystic arts inside. They looked very familiar, as they were the things she saw in Chen Ning's 5th floor in Chiwu Pavilion. Oh right, that strange scroll was taken from Chen Ning as well. In an instant, there was another person who wanted to rape her chrysanthemum. Sovereign Chen Ning? Yu Luo was startled. Chen Ning is currently a demigod sovereign of Azure Flight sect. What? Why did that second beast mix in as well? Yu Luo was a little confused as well. Back then, when Master went missing, Sovereign Chen Ning refused to leave, saying that he wanted to wait for you to return. Thus, he stayed in the sect, and in these few years, he has been taking care of us in many ways. Zhu Yao frowned. She was wondering why Azure Flight could rise so quickly. So it was because of him. Chen Ning was a 10th-ranked demonic beast, which was equivalent to a late-stage demigod sovereign. In terms of reputation, he had already raised the height of Azure Flight sect. Furthermore, Chen Ning was a tycoon. Behind him was the entire Chiwu Pavilion, which had pretty much monopolized a large half of the cultivation market. It would be hard for Azure Flight sect not to become famous. The main point was that she was the one who brought this tycoon over. As expected, if you don't seek death, you won't die. Little Radish. Unfortunately, she did not have much time left. Although she was annoyed with Wu Song, she knew that she did not have the time to deal with this mess. Just as she was about to tell her about her closed-door training plan, she was suddenly pulled by someone. Ewing once again popped out of nowhere. His entire body was a little dirty, and his face was still expressionless. Opening his mouth, he called out, "Big Sis Yao. I already told you not to call me brothel sis. I'm a good person." Zhu Yao instantly felt that back then, she must have been out of her mind to teach Yuing how to say her name. Can't find. Yao, don't leave. Yuing stuttered out a few words. Zhu Yao, however, understood. So the reason why he ended up like this was because he had been searching for her? As expected, this child had an Oedipus complex, right? She casually cast a dirt removal art on him, coaxed him a little, and then said a few words to Yu Luo, telling her of her plans for closed-door training. She then handed Yuing over to her, and returned to the bottom of that cold lake. Ever since Wu Song took over Azure Flight, this was the first time he felt so troubled. After returning to the sect, he found out that the matter of him trying to marry Sovereign Zhu Yao's disciple of Jade Forest Mountain, and being rejected, had spread throughout the entire cultivation world. In the beginning, he did not mind it much. After all, he was a man. Although being rejected did not sound good to him, it was not a big deal. Furthermore, he was indeed the one who let Yu Luo down first. However, immediately after, he did not know why, Celestial Indus sect came looking for him, and wanted him to hand over the sect's traitor, Rulu. Only then did Wu Song feel that the situation had become a little serious. Azure Flight sect had been developing very quickly these few years, but after all, it was a new sect, and did not have much of a background. Celestial Indus sect, however, was a first-rate deity sect that had been passed down for millions of years. In recent years, they even had an additional demigod stage sovereign. No matter how one looked at it, Azure Flight should not be their enemy, and the one who came asking for her was also using the name of Sovereign Chi Han. Chapter 123. Wu Song's heart instantly softened. After all, she was his woman. How could he not protect her? Hence, he chose to believe in her. He subconsciously ignored the fact that she had already lost her primordial Yin. As if he was avoiding it, he did not want to think about it. Hence, he closed the mountain gates and refused to reply. In any case, Azure Flight sect had such a powerful mountain barrier formation. Even if that demigod sovereign really came, there was basically no need to worry. Furthermore, there was still a late-stage demigod Chen Ning in the sect. Even the nascent soul elders who grew up with him in the sect were rather dissatisfied with his actions, yet he chose to ignore them. He repeatedly promised that he would definitely protect Azure Flight sect, and that there would not be any problems. The matter of Sovereign Zhu Yao's return. He had discussed it with his few nascent soul junior martial siblings, and decided to temporarily put it aside. Although she was the official sect master, after all, she had already left for so many years. All the affairs in the sect, big or small, were all handled by Wu Song alone. And he was the one who brought Azure Flight sect to such a large scale step by step. In the hearts of all the disciples, Wu Song was the leader of the entire sect. And Zhu Yao was merely their benefactor who saved their lives back then. Although he did this out of a little selfishness, he was not afraid that Zhu Yao would suddenly come to Azure Flight sect, and in order to help her own disciple vent her anger, kick him out of the sect master position. Because as the sect master he was the rightful one in the first place. Back then Zhu Yao went missing, and the sect was leaderless. When he decided to take over the position of sect master, everyone had agreed to it. And he had always done it well, and everyone had gotten used to his way of doing things. However, he never expected that Zhu Yao basically had no intention of fighting him for the position of sect master. On the 7th day after returning, Elder Sesame returned. Just like that, he swaggered into the main hall in front of all the disciples. He took out the sect master's tablet. That was the sect master's tablet of the former Azure Melancholy. Mistress told me to return this to the true sect master of Azure Melancholy sect. When his words fell, the faces of the 80 or so martial siblings back then darkened. Their faces flashed with a hint of embarrassment. Yet, they could not find any loopholes in his words. They were Azure Flight sect, but that was indeed Azure Melancholy sect's sect master's tablet. For a moment, Wu Song did not know whether he should accept it or not. Sesame, however, did not care about him, and simply placed it on the table beside him. Master said that when she passed by here, she saved your entire family. It was just a small effort. You're welcome. Of course, you don't have to repay me. Everyone's faces darkened even more, but they were also exceptionally embarrassed. Clearly, he had said it very casually, yet it faintly made them feel as though they were ungrateful, especially the few elders who had visited Ancient Hill sect earlier. But what it said was the truth, and no one could refute it. Although the item has already been returned to its rightful owner, Sesame glanced at the crowd. From now on, we no longer owe each other anything. Sesame waved its hand, and walked out of the hall with large strides. Suddenly, a pressure that was comparable to a late-stage demigod's could be felt. However, it instantly engulfed the entire Azure Flight sect. Wu Song and the others were all stunned. But it really made them shiver. They had long known that Sesame was Zhu Yao's demonic beast. However, he had always been displaying his nascent soul stage cultivation, so everyone thought that he was merely a 7th or 8th ranked demonic beast that was born with the ability to transform. Who would have thought that he was actually at the 10th level? It was equivalent to the late stage of soul formation. While the crowd was still in a daze, Sesame, through its spiritual energy, spread its voice to every corner of Azure Flight sect. Lord has ordered. Today, I have returned the sect master's order to this sect. Today, I return the sect leader's order to this sect. From now on, we no longer have any relations with this sect. Wu Song simply felt his heart clench, as he suddenly had a bad premonition. However, he suddenly heard the roars of demonic beasts coming one after another from below the mountain. As though they were responding to Sesame, one after another, they resounded through the clouds. The disciples who were currently training in the plaza stopped one after another. Their faces were filled with confusion, as they did not know where those roars were coming from. These disciples who had just entered the sect not long ago did not know, but the 83 people clearly knew. Those demonic beasts were all demonic beasts that guarded Azure Flight sect's various entrances or formation cores. They had always been proud of Azure Flight sect's impenetrable mountain barrier formation. Even if a few reckless heretic practitioners from a few hundred years ago found out that they were related to Azure Melancholy sect and wanted to find trouble with them, they were blocked outside by the layers of formations. In the end, all of them died in the mouths of demonic beasts. Hence, after this incident, Azure Flight sect's Great Mountain Barrier formation had even surpassed Ancient Hill sects, and was hailed as the #1 mountain barrier formation in the cultivation world. However, they had all forgotten that this formation of Azure Flight sect was laid down by that person on ancient hill sect's Jade Forest Mountain. Traces of panic instantly flashed across the crowd's faces. Sesame, however, suddenly thought of something, and suddenly smiled with an especially annoying smile. "Oh right, is that bastard with the surname Chen here? Don't forget to tell him that I'm Master's true, pure and natural beastie, personally approved by Master. Tell him to scram as far away as he can. If he dares to approach my master again, I will break his chicken claws." After that, he even snorted heavily, and in a flash he disappeared before their eyes. In the instant he disappeared, another white figure suddenly appeared where Sesame was earlier. His initially elegant face revealed a hint of anxiousness, as he began to search around. "Why do I smell the scent of that beastie Sesame? Where's Master? Has Master returned? My lord, I'm a lonely beastie with no one to rely on. Please take me in." After saying that, his figure flashed, and he had already chased after Sesame, and the endless demonic beast roars earlier slowly faded as well, until it completely disappeared. Not a single sound could be heard anymore, and even the aura had disappeared along with it. Wusong's heart slowly turned cold as well. In the next few days, Azure Flight was very lively. The mountain barrier formation, which had lost its protective demonic beast, was basically unable to withstand a single blow. Celestial Indus sects swaggered their way here, and the only demigod practitioner was not in the sect as well. Although Wusong had the cultivation of a late-stage nascent soul practitioner, in terms of overall strength, he was still incomparable to Celestial Indus sect, which had 2 demigod sovereigns. No matter how much true love there was between Wusong and Mu Meiyan, at this moment, he had no choice but to hand her over. He even had to take responsibility for the act of locking her outside the door earlier, and privately compensated them with a series of spiritual grasses, spiritual medicine, and mystic tools. However, when it was really time to hand her over, Mu Meiyan had disappeared. Wusong was dumbfounded. The people in the sect faintly felt even more resentment towards him. On the surface, Rulu was expelled from the sect, but in reality, she had escaped. Otherwise, Celestial Indus sect wouldn't have come here to ask for her, and take advantage of her at the same time. However, she was not stupid. She had long guessed that Wusong would waver. Although she hated him, she still endured it. Her biggest cheat, Phantom, had yet to wake up. Now that she was captured, she would not be able to make a comeback for a long time. The reason why she stayed in Azure Flight was simply to wait for a chance to make a comeback. However, evidently this place was no longer safe. It would be weird if she didn't leave. Only now did Wusong begin to reflect on whether Yen, whom he had placed in the depths of his heart, was truly sincere towards him as well. Suddenly, he recalled Zhu Yao's words. She said that she had already lost her primordial Yin. In the past, he had purposely ignored this matter, and had even faintly found an excuse for her, saying that she was forced to do so. However, looking at it now, it seemed like a joke. He began to miss Yu Yao. The two of them had been together for close to 1,000 years. Yet, she had been planning for him in every aspect. In order to save him, she had even damaged her own cultivation. However, because he was unable to hand over the person, Azure Flight sect had no choice but to pay an even greater price in terms of material resources, and had seemingly emptied out a large half of the sect. Initially, he did not place these matters in his eyes, because Azure Flight sect had the entire Chiwu Pavilion as their backing. In these few years, he had never had to worry about the various resources, because they had Chen Ning, who threw himself at them, refused to leave, and insisted on staying behind. However, he had forgotten that the reason why Chen Ning stayed behind back then was because he was waiting for his lord. And his lord was Sovereign Zhu Yao, who had already announced that she no longer had any relations with Azure Flight. Although he did not know why he addressed Zhu Yao as his lord, following Zhu Yao's withdrawal, Azure Flight sect had indeed lost this god of fortune who granted all requests. The days of Azure Flight sect suddenly became tight. In the past, Wusong, who only needed to cultivate wholeheartedly and could casually obtain natural treasures, had also begun to worry about the livelihood of the sect. The most terrible thing was, he realized that his cultivation could no longer advance. Not only him, even the few people in the group who had reached nascent soul with him had their cultivation stagnated for a very long time as well. After asking, he realized that the cultivation levels of the 83 people who had cultivated together with him back then were all the same. Although the lowest among them had already reached the Azoth stage, all of them had stopped without exception. Logically speaking, for people like them with 4 or 5 spirit veins, being able to form their Azoth cores was already considered a huge opportunity. However, back then, when Zhu Yao imparted this cultivation method to them, she had clearly said that it was not impossible for all of them to have the chance to reach for the great Tao and ascend as a deity. He knew that Zhu Yao would not lie to them. It must be because the cultivation method they were cultivating in was still incomplete, or there was a certain aspect that needed to be modified. Back then, when she created this cultivation method, didn't she often help them modify it as well? However, he no longer had any reason to seek her guidance now. Only then did Wu Song realize that because of his own selfishness, he had committed an irreversible mistake. However, everything was already too late. Azure flight was the same as its rise, and with an unimaginable speed, it rapidly declined. Of course, Zhu Yao, who was immersed in cultivating her life skills, basically did not have the time to notice these things. Zhu Yao's goal was to create the strongest weapon in the cultivation world. However, regarding the art of artifact forging, although she knew what it was still her first time personally doing it. Actually, there were only 3 stages to all life skills: elementary, intermediate, and high. Of course, this was nonsense. Artifact forging was categorized into different levels. Those who were able to forge 1st to 3rd rank mystic artifacts were considered as elementary artificers. 4th to 7th rank were considered as intermediate artificers. 8th rank and above, including supreme grade mystic artifacts, were considered as high-level artificers. Evidently, Yu Yan was someone who stood at the top of the pyramid. Back then, her first weapon, that fan, was a supreme grade mystic artifact of the 3rd rank. Zhu Yao had also asked about the pile of mystic artifacts in her master's storage ring. And her master's answer was, back then, he was bored and casually made them. Since he had nowhere to put them, he casually stuffed them in. A certain someone who had always treated these things as treasures, when he found out the truth, tears began to fall. P.S. Is there anything you guys need me to bring? Tell me, though I can't send them to you one by one. But I can send a picture for you guys to take a look. Chapter 124. It turned out that his master didn't think that these things were useful at all. They were just trash that he didn't have a place to put after he finished cultivating. Why did you leave it to her in the first place? Master, come out. Let's talk about life. I've placed some refining materials in that ring. It should be able to support you in raising your refining skills to a high level. Yu Yan casually interrupted. Only then did Zhu Yao recall that in the corner of the ring, there seemed to be a huge pile of blackened objects. Back then, she had thought that they were some useless things, and was planning to find a time to throw them away. So that was the real thing that her master had left for her. Actually, she couldn't be blamed. Anyone who saw a pile of glittering high-grade magic tools and magic treasures would notice that the charcoal-like material was the real thing, and the rest were just trash that hadn't been sorted out. Zhu Yao's heart felt a little stifled. Master, is there anything else you haven't told me? Can you say it all at once? The white figure on the jade pendant was stunned. After a while he said, in addition to refining materials, there are also talisman papers for making talismans, formation chests for setting up arrays, and unhatched demon beast eggs from the 1st to the 8th rank. But since you already have a demon beast, I don't think these will be of any use. Zhu Yao was instantly dumbfounded. Was her master trying to nurture her into an all-rounder? There was too much information. She needed to take a break. Yu Yan, on the other hand, had a determined look. As a qualified master, naturally, he would not keep anything to himself. Whatever skills he knew, he would naturally teach it all to his disciple. It was definitely not because he was bored after waiting for 16,000 years, so he collected these for fun. Definitely not. Formations, taming beasts, crafting talismans, and refining tools are all available. Why aren't you refining pellets? Zhu Yao suddenly realized this problem. There's no need for you to learn the path of pellet refinement. Yu Yan frowned. He still politely declined medicinal pellets and the like. Why? Zhu Yao had wanted to ask this question a long time ago. Her master seemed to especially hate medicinal pellets. In the past, he had always said that they were not beneficial to her cultivation. It didn't seem to be a problem for other people to eat pills when they were cultivating. Why would she be affected? Yu Yan's expression turned even colder, and he did not reply for a long while. Just when Zhu Yao thought that he would not reply her, he suddenly coldly said, "When I formed my Azoth core." Was he going to tell a story? I once met a female cultivator. Zhu Yao's expression instantly turned ugly, and 100 curses instantly surfaced in the depths of her heart. What demon? She's an alchemy grandmaster. Yu Yan frowned deeply, his face was filled with displeasure. She told me that she can give me an Azoth transformation pellet to aid me in forming my Azoth core. The condition is... What? Zhu Yao's heart instantly lifted. Yu Yan's expression was already cold to the point where ice shards were about to fall. The corner of his lips twitched, as though he had thought of something that was hard to speak of. Even Zhu Yao was beginning to imagine a scene in her mind, a male and female action movie. Only then did he speak up. The condition is to let me hold her hand. Ah, that's it? Did she hear wrongly? Or did he literally mean to hold hands? Yu Yan turned to look at her with a "isn't this enough" look on his face. Damn. She had already prepared a pair of scissors. And you're telling me that there's nothing between you two? Zhu Yao instantly felt like lighting a candle for that female practitioner. Will you die if you pull it? No. Yu Yan honestly replied. But it's very dirty. Where is it dirty? How could she not know that her master was a germaphobe? When she went up the mountain, there was mud on her shoes. What did holding hands have to do with shoes? It's not like she was pulling her feet. There's mud on my shoes every single day. I'm sorry, I made you dirty for so many years. You're different. Yu Yan replied confidently. You're my disciple. Thank you. She was not happy with this reason at all. You're welcome. The hell, say another word. Do you believe that I won't gang rape you? Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and only then did she reluctantly accept such a ridiculous reason. Just because of this, you've never eaten medicinal pellets? Something cultivated by unclean people is naturally unclean as well. Yu Yan had a matter-of-fact look, and then, he even solemnly reminded her. You can't eat them either. Great God, kneel down. Those food safety organizations should have invited you over. They would have definitely done their job properly. The topic regarding medicinal pellets had temporarily come to an end. Zhu Yao was afraid that if they continued talking, she would once again have the thought of deceiving her master. She took out the smelting furnace, and then, threw the low-grade profound iron in her hands into it. She had only found out today that there was actually a teleportation formation at the bottom of the cold pond. It could directly teleport her to the depths of the ocean, where the lava of an underground volcano was. And the lava here was located above the spiritual vein, and the intensity of the fire was infinitely close to the 9 heavens' divine flames. Mystic tools smelted here could expel even more impurities, and raise the grade of the finished product. Zhu Yao's first smelting was undoubtedly a failure, because the temperature was too high. When Zhu Yao threw a basin-sized profound iron in, it did not even produce a single bubble, as it instantly melted. Zhu Yao, you need to use spiritual energy to envelop it, before you can smelt it. Yu Yan reminded at the side. Only then did Zhu Yao take out another piece. Using fire spiritual energy to envelop the profound iron, she slowly moved it in. This time, it was a little better. Although the profound iron still instantly melted, at the very least, a red residue was left behind. However, with such a small piece, at the very most, it could be used to make a rather spiritual embroidery needle. Zhu Yao did not give up, hence she tried it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. When she had almost used up a large half of this low-grade profound iron, only then did she slowly regain the feeling. Furthermore, The spiritual energy she used every time was different, and the results of smelting were different as well. In the beginning, she used fire spiritual energy. Later on, she tried metal spiritual energy, and evidently, the results were much better than fire spiritual energy. And the angle of smelting every time, the location where the spiritual energy was enveloped was different as well. After grasping these, she began to learn how to forge. There were ready-made tools in the smelting cave, which were left behind by her master. Firstly, she had to hammer out a rough shape. Of course, the most important thing was to remove the impurities inside. This was a purely physical task, and every time she hammered, she had to carry spiritual energy. Zhu Yao was a demigod stage practitioner. She did not have anything else, but her spiritual energy was extremely abundant. Hence, this step was not difficult for her. Yu Yan would occasionally appear as well, and would occasionally give her a few pointers. However, most of them were, "There's no need to hammer this one because it's already useless. This one's useless again. This one will still be useless. Why don't you lie down for a while?" What happened to the most basic trust between master and disciple? Are you here to teach me how to forge weapons, or are you here to tear me down? Yet he even said it with a serious look, smashing her self-confidence piece by piece. Zhu Yao decided to go out for a breather. After all, staying by the side of a volcano every single day was indeed not very comfortable. However, she never expected that Yu Ying would be waiting for her at the side of the cold lake. Seeing that she had appeared, he was evidently very happy, and even his eyes had shone a little. However, his expression was still the same as before, without much of an expression. Zhu Yao could not help but feel an itch in her hands. Pinching his expressionless little face, she forcefully pulled it to the two sides. Finally, a manual smile surfaced on his face. "Yu Ying, are you obedient?" Yu Ying felt a little pain from being pinched, yet he did not struggle, and simply nodded towards her. After pondering for a moment, he added, "Be obedient." Only then did Zhu Yao satisfyingly put down her hands. "Master." Yu Luo sensed that she had come out as well, and flew over on her sword. "Have you come out of closed-door training?" "Nope, I just came out for a breather. I'll head back in a moment." After Zhu Yao said that, Yu Luo and Yu Ying were evidently a little disappointed. Yu Ying even lowered his head, took 2 steps closer, and reached out his hands to hug her thighs. Yu Ying grew taller. Zhu Yao compared for a moment, and suddenly realized little Yu Ying had already reached the height of her waist. In the past, he was clearly only at the height of her thighs. It has already been 5 years. Naturally, he grew taller and bigger. Yu Luo explained with a smile. Zhu Yao was a little shocked. She did not expect that 5 years would have passed after he went to forge iron. The difficulty was much higher than soy sauce. Gratifyingly stroking Yu Ying's little head, she then looked towards Yu Luo in front of her, and casually asked, "What about you?" Yu Luo was startled for a moment, and only after a moment did she understand what her master was referring to. She slowly smiled, and her face was filled with a relieved expression. "I have long thought things through, and the past is already in the past. As a practitioner of deity cultivation, how can I always be trapped in the past?" It was good that she had thought things through. Zhu Yao raised her thumb up and gave her a thumbs up. "As expected of my disciple." Yu Luo shook her head with a smile. Suddenly, as though she had recalled something, she mimicked Zhu Yao's tone and said, "Furthermore, Azure Flight Sec's current situation, I'm afraid. Just like what Master said, knowing that he's not doing well, I feel at ease." When had she ever said something like that? She clearly said, "Take his life while he's down." Apui. It's good for you, good for me, and good for everyone. Actually, she could somewhat guess Azure Flight's situation as well. Back then, when she returned that tablet, it was because she no longer wanted to care about that side. Back then, the cultivation method of that group battle was indeed not comprehensive. Though their cultivation could be raised together, there was a huge problem. It was dependency. Everyone was used to working together, and subconsciously, they would ignore things that they were not good at. Her original plan was to wait until everyone had built their foundation, before rearranging the formation, in order to prevent such limitations from appearing. However, before she could make it in time, Wu Song's matter happened. Actually, she had thought that Wu Song's matter was unrelated to the other little radishes. If the other little radishes still had the slightest bit of respect for her position as the sect master, in their hearts, they would definitely come and ask her about this matter. However, she had placed that communication talisman by her side for so many days, and not a single one of the 83 little radishes had contacted her. This more or less caused her heart to turn a little cold. Most probably, they no longer needed her as their guide. That was why she returned that tablet. However, regarding the matter of Sesame dispersing all of the formation guarding demonic beasts and seducing Chunning away, Zhu Yao was completely unaware of it. This was all caused by Sesame alone. That was why Sesame did not dare to appear in front of her when she came out for a breather this time, afraid that he would expose himself. Chapter 125. Zhu Yao did not stay outside for long. After instructing Yu Luo to teach Yuing how to cultivate, she once again returned to the smelting cave and began her daily smithing work. Initially, she had thought that smithing was a simple matter, especially to a demigod stage practitioner like her. However, in reality, she realized that it was basically not that simple. The smithing of a mystic artifact was not something that could be formed simply by hammering with spiritual energy. The first batch of semi-finished products she forged were basically all trash. Only one of them still retained a strand of spiritual energy, but at the very most, it could only be used to ward off ghosts and exorcise evil. If she wanted to use it to defend against enemies, it was basically a joke. Zhu Yao was a little disheartened. She clearly hammered harder than anyone else, yet the result was worse than anyone else's. If she were to compare smithing to education, she was currently at the kindergarten level at the very most. Master, why is it like this? She had clearly worked so hard. Every single material has its own attribute, and mystic artifacts do as well. Yu Yan lightly explained. The amount of spiritual energy a material can absorb is limited as well. You're saying, spiritual energy of the same attribute must be used in order to forge a mystic artifact? Yes and no. Yu Yan continued. The key lies in what kind of mystic artifact you want to forge it into. In other words, if it was a flying mystic artifact, then it must have sufficient wind spiritual energy. If it was a water attribute mystic artifact, then it must have water spiritual energy. I understand. Zhu Yao once again began to smelt the other piece of profound iron. This time, she did not forge it like before, where she hammered it randomly. Instead, she gathered a strand of wind spiritual energy, and with every hammering, she smashed it into the mystic artifact. However, the strange thing was, although the wind spiritual energy had already been transferred over, the amount absorbed by the iron was very little. Zhu Yao guessed that it was related to the speed at which this piece of iron absorbed spiritual energy. Hence, for the second time, she reduced the output of spiritual energy. As expected, the amount of spiritual energy absorbed this time was the same as before. This time, Zhu Yao spent 4 to 5 times the amount of time compared to before, and she had even repeatedly smelted it. Holding on to the shape that had already been forged, Zhu Yao could even feel the abundant wind spiritual energy on it. Zhu Yao could finally proceed to the next step, inscribing formations. Formations were her forte. A flying mystic artifact naturally needed a flying formation. This time, Zhu Yao was no longer greedy, and only imprinted a single formation. In an instant, the flying sword's embryonic form, which was still overflowing with spiritual qi, suddenly converged and was firmly locked inside by the formation. The wind spiritual qi in the air seemed to be getting closer to the sword. Zhu Yao did not let her guard down during the final step of polishing it into shape. Following the trajectory of the formation, under the precondition that it did not harm the spiritual energy, he slowly polished the smooth blade. Finally, her first weapon took shape. Zhu Yao was a little excited. After all, this was the first completed weapon she had made. Though it was just the most basic flying sword, she eagerly presented it to her master. Yu Yan slightly narrowed his eyes, scanned the body of the sword for a while, and then made a sound. First ranked. Low grade. Zhu Yao's glass heart instantly shattered onto the ground. What happened to the promise of accompanying her disciple to raise her self-confidence? Forget about a level 1 magic tool, it's a flying magic tool anyway. She didn't have much expectation for it since she could ascend to the heavens at the first level. But low grade, damn it. She didn't believe that she couldn't make a high-grade magic tool. Zhu Yao once again threw herself into frantically leveling up her life skills. She had already grasped the correct method to refine artifacts, and the success rate of Zhu Yao's forging had evidently increased. Only when she was finally able to refine low-grade profound iron into a second-ranked substandard mystic tool did she give up on this material. She began to refine higher-grade materials. Days passed just like that as she hammered and hammered. Zhu Yao believed that practice makes perfect, and she had already found a few tricks. And when she was inscribing formations, she could already inscribe 2 formations at the same time. She did not know how long had passed, but when she was refining an ice stone that could refine a 5th-ranked mystic tool, she suddenly realized that the spiritual energy she injected into the material would actually be distributed in a line shape. And with every refinement, the number of lines would increase. When her refinement reached a standard that could be used normally, she realized that the lines had yet to fill up half of the material. This was a pleasant surprise. Could it be that after filling up all the lines, the mystic tool's spiritual energy capacity would be its limit? After having this thought, Zhu Yao did not stop her refinement. Instead, she continued to inject spiritual energy into the material and slowly filled it up. The illusory figure floating above the jade pendant sensed his disciple's abnormality. He glanced at the familiar figure, and the corner of his lips twitched a little. He finally understood. As expected, it's his. That. Zhu Yao excitedly filled the entire piece of metal with spiritual energy, thinking that she would definitely be able to create an incredible mystic tool this time. She failed. The material was destroyed, because she realized that, although it was filled with spiritual energy, there was no more space to inscribe formations. And she even thought of the polishing process at the back. If she were to accidentally damage it even by a little bit, the spiritual energy inside would completely disperse because of a small crack. She was only concerned with injecting more spiritual energy into it to raise the grade of the mystic tool, and actually did not think of this at all. No matter how much spiritual energy there was, without the guidance of a formation, it was just a piece of scrap metal. Zhu Yao's heart felt stifled. With a little heartache, she abandoned this ice stone that was filled with spiritual energy. She once again took out the same material and continued to refine. This time, she did not blindly inject spiritual energy and arrange them into lines. She drove the spiritual energy to the 2 sides and left a spot in the middle to inscribe a formation. Although the spiritual energy was lesser now, she spent even more time. In the first place, injecting spiritual energy was a huge project, let alone after injecting the spiritual energy and arranging them according to her own thoughts. This was the first time Zhu Yao felt a little powerless. She spent a lot of effort before she managed to arrange the spiritual energy properly. When it came to inscribing the formation, it was much simpler. However, when it came to the polishing process, it was another difficult problem. No matter how careful she was, there was still a small crack, and the spiritual energy instantly dispersed completely. Zhu Yao felt a wave of heartache. Finally, after a dozen or so failures, she created a successful product. Although it was only a 4th-ranked mystic tool, it was of high quality. As expected, hard work would always be rewarded. Most probably, she would be able to create an exquisite one the next time. Just when she was about to continue, she realized that she had used up all of the ice stones. She could only use another type of black or that was of the same grade as it. However, when she was forging, she realized a huge problem. Those lines that represented spiritual energy had disappeared. Flip's table. How was she supposed to continue? Zhu Yao once again took out various materials and tested them one by one. Other than the ice stones, there really weren't any other spiritual energy lines. Zhu Yao was a little dumbfounded. After taking a few deep breaths, she finally calmed down and thought about the reason. Logically speaking, These materials used to forge mystic tools should be able to withstand spiritual energy. Just what was the difference between the ice stones and the others? After thinking about it carefully, other than the color, there wasn't much difference. Color? Could it be that the reason was because the white color was more translucent, allowing her to see it more clearly? Ho, stop joking. Zhu Yao did not believe it herself. If that was the case, the other stones could not be seen with the naked eye, and divine sense. The hell, divine sense could really see it. Did the reason have to be so simple and crude? Zhu Yao, who was still panicking earlier, was momentarily a little speechless. Silently picking up the hammer, she released her divine sense, and continued to arrange the lines. The higher the grade of the mystic tool, the more spiritual energy it required, and the more time it would take. Initially, Zhu Yao thought that with her demigod stage cultivation as a foundation, injecting spiritual energy like this was basically a piece of cake. Until the first time her spiritual energy was exhausted, she was still holding on to a half-completed 6th-ranked mystic tool. Only then did she realize how much spiritual energy was required for life skills that she had never placed importance on. She had no choice but to meditate to recover her spiritual energy. And after that, such incidents happened more and more frequently. When she was finally able to forge an 8th-ranked mystic tool, she had exhausted all of the spiritual energy in her body twice. She finally understood why everyone would always need to go into closed-door training when they were refining pellets or forging mystic tools. In this kind of situation where spiritual energy was completely exhausted, if she were to still wander around outside, she would be a target that could be instantly killed at any moment. Master, there's no more stock. Zhu Yao glanced at the storage ring. There was a large amount of materials piled inside, and they had already been completely used up by her. However, she had just managed to forge an 8th-ranked mystic tool, and it was even a low-grade one. Yu Yan frowned, and only after a while did he slowly say, "You can smelt the mystic tools inside." The mystic tools inside. Zhu Yao glanced at the ring on her hand, and suddenly widened her eyes. Master, you can't be referring to the pile of mystic tools you've refined, right? Nodding. Zhu Yao instantly felt like flipping the table. Those were all 8th-ranked and above, and most of them were 10th-ranked mystic tools. Smelting them just like that, you wastrel. Yu Yan, however, had a calm look. Those things were materials in the first place, and he had merely refined them out of boredom. It was only right for him to return them to materials. Are you really going to smelt them? Amen. Oh, her heart ached. She couldn't even bear to throw away that 1st-ranked flying sword. Master, why are you so generous? Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. Her refining skills had to be raised, but to smelt these high-grade mystic tools, after hesitating for a long while, Zhu Yao's hands trembled as she picked out a few mystic tools that were relatively weaker, and began to smelt them. As she smelted them, her blood was dripping. It was because she had gone deep into refining mystic tools that she could see just how precious these mystic tools were. Putting aside the materials, just the intricacies of the formations on them were completely not any simpler than the Great Mountain Barrier Formation, that she could not understand no matter how hard she tried. They were a perfect mystic tool that could be used for both offense and defense, and some of them even had storage functions. They were completely offensive and defensive mystic tools. Oh, her heart ached. Probably because of the guilt she felt from destroying top-grade mystic tools. Zhu Yao was even more diligent in her subsequent refinements. Although there were mystic tools that were of relatively lower quality, fortunately, no useless products appeared. She was already able to inscribe dozens of different formations on them. The mystic tools she refined had broken through to the 9th-ranked as well. When the mystic tools in her ring were more or less depleted, she finally refined a 10th-ranked mystic tool, though it was still a low-grade one. Zhu Yao felt that it was time for her to stop and get down to business, as she voiced out her initial thoughts. Master, I want to make a special mystic tool. We need a very smooth material. What do you think we should use? Chapter 126. When Zhu Yao officially came out of closed-door training, it was already 100 years later. When he walked out of the cold pond, He saw an unfamiliar man dressed in black standing there. He was very tall, but his face was very delicate and handsome. His expression was somewhat wooden. She did not know if it was because of that shadow, but she instinctively disliked black-clothed people. Although the other party was just an Azoth stage practitioner, Zhu Yao could not help but frown. The Jade Forest Mountain had never allowed outsiders to enter, and the occasional visitors could only be sent by ZMO to look for her. However, he wasn't wearing the uniform of Ancient Hill Sect. Could it be that in the 100 years she was in closed-door training, the sect had changed their uniforms? Who are you? The man seemed to be stunned for a moment. His eyes, which had been shining a moment ago, dimmed quite a bit. However, he walked straight towards her. Zhu Yao frowned. She was a little dissatisfied with his silence. However, seeing that he did not have any ill intentions, she did not back off. The man stopped when he was only half a step away from her. I say, isn't it a little too close? Even if you're tall, you don't have to show off like this. Before she could finish her sentence, he reached out and hugged her impolitely. He hugged her so tightly that she could feel his heartbeat. Zhu Yao was instantly dumbfounded. Were all youngsters nowadays so open-minded? Probably because she was overly shocked, Zhu Yao had completely forgotten to resist. The man became even more presumptuous. He bent his body slightly and tilted his face. He rubbed her hair gently with an intoxicated look on his face. His warm breath brushed the side of her face. Zhu Yao, who had only teased her iceberg master in her entire life, was being teased by someone else for the first time. Her face instantly flushed red, not knowing whether it was because she was scared or embarrassed. But in the next moment, it immediately cooled down, and it was the kind of chill that penetrated his heart. Master, listen to my explanation. Her palm instantly emitted out a bone-piercing cold aura, which instantly enveloped her entire body. It was so cold that Zhu Yao shivered, and as if it was a conditioned reflex, she pushed the man in front of her away. He pushed it too hastily, so it carried a little bit of spiritual energy. Yi, who are you? Zhu Yao clenched her palms, which were about to turn stiff. She was holding on to the jade pendant which allowed her to communicate with her master. When he just came up, he couldn't bear to put it into his ring, so he held it in his palm. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a situation as soon as they arrived? Instantly, they felt as if they had been caught in the act. The man was pushed back 2 steps by her. He seemed to be injured. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. However, he continued to stare at her. His gaze was so deep that it made her flustered, as if she was the only one left in the world. He paused for a moment, then approached her again. Fuck. What are you doing now? Zhu Yao felt that the cold aura, which had dissipated with great difficulty, had once again begun to spread. Neither of them were easy to deal with. Zhu Yao had a guarded look, and this time, the man did not pounce on her again. He stopped a step away from her, and with lightning speed, he pulled onto the corner of her robe. Why does this action look so familiar? Yao. The man let out a voice. His voice was as clear as the gurgling of spring water. Huh. What did that mean? The man's eyes narrowed slightly, as he looked at her even more attentively. He once again called out. Yao. What do you want? Sister. Ah. Yao sis. Damn it. She finally knew who this person was. Yuing? The man's eyes instantly shone as he nodded. Zhu Yao sized Yuing up for a moment. Yuing, who was already a head taller than her, was instantly in disbelief. This was that skinny little wimp from back then. He looked pretty sturdy, huh? What did he eat to grow up? She was faintly unable to accept it. But when she thought about it, 100 years had already passed. If he was immortal, he would most probably have reincarnated. It was understandable that he was just a little taller. Not bad, little brat. You formed your Azoth core so quickly. Recognizing the person in front of her, Zhu Yao's nervousness completely disappeared. Activating her familiar mode, she placed her palm on his shoulder and planned to discuss with him the huge problem of whether humans could develop stably. I have something to discuss with you. Yuing still did not like to speak and simply looked at her. My name is Zhu Yao. In the future, can you not call me brothel sis? Call me Big Sis Zhu, or add one more word, Big Sis Zhu Yao. Will you die? Having a master who called her Desire every day was already enough. Why did he have to call her a brothel sis now? Don't make her doubt her parents' taste, hey. Ying was startled by her sudden outburst of anger. A moment later he awkwardly moved the corner of his lips and made a Zhu Yao sound. Z. Yao big sis. Scram. Zhu Yao raised her hand and slapped on his head. This unbearable child, he must have done it on purpose. Ying was not angry either. He simply reached out his hand to rub his head that was hurting from the slap, and the expression he used to look at her with became even more serious. Where's Yu Luo? Zhu Yao casually asked. Pulling Yu Ying's hand, she held onto his wrist, checked his injuries, and helped him heal a little. Earlier, she did not recognize him, and subconsciously pushed him, causing him to suffer some light injuries. Yu Ying's gaze shifted from her face to his hand that was being grabbed, and blankly replied her. Great Hall. Great Hall. Main Mountain? Why was she going there? Ying nodded. Zhu Yao frowned, faintly sensing that something had happened. After carefully sensing it, there were indeed many unfamiliar presences in the direction of the Great Hall, and she could faintly sense that those presences were extremely strong. What happened? Ying did not know either. Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment, and decided to head over to take a look. Just as she flew up with her sword, she realized there was an additional figure next to her. Why are you following me? Zhu Yao glared at Ying at the side. Together? No. She could sense that the great hall in front was filled with nascent soul stage practitioners. Almost all the nascent soul stage practitioners of the sect were already there. Usually, in situations like this, they would only be summoned if the sect had sent out a huge matter. It's not safe in front. Stay here, and be obedient. Ying frowned, yet he did not obediently return. Instead, he flew closer to her on his sword, and reached out his hand to grab onto the corner of her clothes. Zhu Yao. It had already been 100 years. Was this bastard's Oedipus complex not cured yet? What's the use of having such a huge stature? Zhu Yao sighed. She could not be bothered with him, and immediately flew towards the great hall of the main mountain. Her appearance evidently made the people in the hall feel a little more at ease. Zmo even stood up with a joyous expression. Senior Martial Aunt, you're out of closed-door training? Yu Yao stood right next to Zmo, and happily bowed towards her as well. Master. Zhu Yao finally knew why she was here. She had already recovered her nascent soul stage cultivation. Mn. After taking a closer look, she realized that there were many people in the hall. Not only were the nascent soul stage reverends of the entire sect present, even Feng Yi and another demigod sovereign were all present. This was basically a gathering of heroes. Zhu Yao first greeted the demigod sovereigns of her own sect, before bringing Ying along, and immediately sat down on the main seats. Looking around, she realized that there were even more nascent soul stage reverends from the other sections. Seemingly, the nascent soul stage elders of the various sects and clans were all present. It was even more spectacular than during the intersect tournament back then. Furthermore, there were old acquaintances as well. Wu Song brought along a few nascent soul stage radishes, and they were seated not far away from her as well. However, his eyes no longer had the high spirits he had when he came to cancel the engagement back then. His brows were gradually tainted with a hint of melancholy, most probably because of the trifling matters of the sect in recent years. His eyes, however, had been staring at Yu Yao, who was behind Zmo, with a complicated expression. Though Yu Yao had a calm expression, and she did not even notice him at all. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief, and it seemed like she had completely let go of everything. Reverend Zmo, I feel that what the Celestial Indus sect elder said is correct. In the first place, the purpose of the intersect tournament is to allow the relationships between the sects to grow closer. A tall and skinny man stood up. In the past, when it was held in your esteemed sect, it was merely a verbal agreement between everyone. That's right. Another nascent soul stage man responded as well. It didn't say that it had to be held in Ancient Hill sect, right? Since Ancient Hill sect was able to hold it, naturally, the other sects are able to hold it as well. That's right. Another person stood up. Celestial Indus sect is a large deity sect as well, and it's not any weaker than Ancient Hill sect. It's the same even if it's held there. So it was because of the matter of where the inter-sect tournament would be held. Zhu Yao frowned. In the past, every single inter-sect tournament would be held in Ancient Hill sect, and this had already become a common practice in the cultivation world. Although holding this inter-sect tournament did not bring any actual benefits to Ancient Hill sect, to a deity sect that cherished their reputation, it was still a huge matter to raise their reputation. This was also one of the reasons why Ancient Hill sect was known as the #1 sect in the cultivation world. If they were to suddenly hand it over to another sect, wouldn't that be a direct slap to their faces? That's not right. As expected, ZMO would not agree to it. In the past, the inter-sect tournament had always been held in my sect, and I believe everyone is clear about this. Although my sect has worked hard for so many years, putting aside our contributions and hard work for now, I believe everyone is already used to it. Now you're suddenly not willing to hold the tournament in my sect. Is it because you feel that this Mu is not taking good care of you? As expected of ZMO, who had been the sect master for so many years. His words were full of obstructions, and when translated into human words, it would be, "You've worked hard to serve everyone for so many years, contributed money and effort, and even worked so hard without collecting any fees. Not only that, you're still turning your back on me?" As expected, the moment these words came out, the expressions of the few people who spoke earlier turned a little ugly. Sect Master Mu. The sect master of Celestial Indus sect was finally unable to sit any longer, as he stood up. Ancient Hill sect has been hosting the inter-sect tournament for so many years. Naturally, we have worked hard and contributed a lot. In the past, the other sects had the heart, but were powerless. However, now that our sect has the power to host it, we wish to take it on. This can be considered as sharing some of Ancient Hill sect's burdens. When translated into human words, it would be, "It's too tiring for you to handle things alone. Let me help you." ZMO smiled. Celestial Indus sect's kind intentions, this Mu appreciates it. However, ever since 10,000 years ago, Ancient Hill sect has never once delayed the inter-sect tournament. I believe in the future, when it comes to the inter-sect tournament, it will still be easy. When translated into human words, it would be, "You don't have to worry blindly, we can handle it." The sect master of Celestial Indus sect was stopped for a moment, and his expression instantly turned ugly. Initially, the reason why he had gathered so many sects to talk about this matter was to give Ancient Hill sect some face. Who knew that this ZMO's words were watertight, and instead, it made them seem a little unreasonable. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.